It's now 7 o'clock, so let's begin our meeting. Welcome, everyone. I'm Barney Arnold, the chair of the select board, and welcome to the select board meeting on Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022. I would like to review the agenda. We are at 7 o'clock now with community input. 7:25, we're going to continuing discussion with the design folks on the Maple Street Bridge. Then we have the ARPA committee coming in to discuss some of their recommendations. At 7:30, we had a hearing on the Lionsgate Road layout. At 8 o'clock, an update on the screening committee for the town administrator search. At 8:15, we'll be doing making some budget decisions for the FY20 budget, followed by looking at our town meeting warrant and finalizing what's going to go on the warrant, followed by the town administrator's report, the liaison reports, and finally approval of warrants and adjournment at 10 o'clock. And before I ask for community input, I would like to acknowledge that this is the last select board meeting of our very esteemed town administrator, Tim Goddard.
That's like a prisoner's calendar. Prisoner's calendar.
I know. I don't know if you can see him on your screen very well, but yes, we're getting a big smile.
Like a Cheshire cat.
Yes, yeah.
Well, let's have good laundry.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll show you.
That's right. But I just wanted to say that we're celebrating in very good style coming soon, but that I just want to say publicly here how much I appreciate the service you provided to the town for many, many years. And I particularly appreciated my work with you as the chair over the last year. So I wish you the very, very best.
Yeah, Tim, if I could just speak for a second, I mean, it's been a real pleasure working with you and developing a friendship with you. And I think you've been amazing for the town of Carlisle. And, I don't know what I would have done as a chair if I hadn't had your even steady keel demeanor on everything and your filling in all the flubs that I did and covering for what I did when I was first the chair. And I just really appreciate it. Really, really going to miss you. And you better stay in touch.
So I'm sure he's going to be back with a chance to forget.
He's keeping his key.
Yeah.
Tim and I go back to finance committee.
That's right.
That school committee was here, so always been great support. Steady guy, accurate with his facts, separate emotion from substance. So appreciate it. All the best. Yeah, we'll do this.
Okay, well, no, I'm just kind of going to echo what everybody else. Oh, really? Well, I know. No, but well, just.
We'll just say it again.
Oh, exactly, yeah. Well, first, give me an open mic. But no, just to kind of echo what everybody's been saying, but it's funny too, because like Nathan said, kind of always keeping that even feel. However, we can always tell with your tone, whether you thought something was a good idea. And I always appreciate it because, yeah, as Nathan said, I think we leaned on you a lot, especially for the stuff that we didn't know about and the history of stuff. And it's hard to look in the so definitely appreciate all the times you kept us around and all the times that, you gave us your opinion without giving us your opinion. So, no, but it, and I think the other piece to it, I don't think a lot of folks in town truly understand and appreciate what you do outside of it's keeping us in line. And all the different committees and the things that you serve on the chair. It's a lot of work, you know, to be able to pull this bunch together, you know, as it changes from year to year to year. You know, that's a task in and of itself. So thank you for being there for my 6 years. Select board. I'm not.
Well,
And I just want to say, the other thing that people are not aware of is everything that Tim does in the town that he lives, because he's the moderator there. And it's been great because also that he brings that knowledge and expertise to our town.
and Wayne Davis.
It's the Wayne Davis of Littleton, right? And he was also a select board member at one point. And, yes, so,
I thought I knew everything.
yeah.
Till you came here and
Yeah.
got a few of those down hearings.
Right, so I think that has certainly informed his service to us as well. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Alrighty, with that, I would like to invite anyone that has input for the community input time, and if you are remote, if you would indicate by either signaling in the chat or putting your video on and just raising your hand. Seeing none, let's move on then. And Jody, thank you for being here again. We are discussing the update on the Maple Street Bridge, particularly the question of whether or not there's an option to have a wood railing. And in our packet, we have a lot of information that we appreciate that you gathered. Tonight, my understanding is that we'll review briefly that information, but that our primary purpose tonight is that we want to approve the filing of the grant applications for both of the projects. But Jody, do you want to briefly explain what you learned about the wood railing option?
I'd be happy to. Madam Chair, members of the Select Board, again, my name is Jody Trumpio with TEC, and on behalf of the town, wanted to give you that update. Since the last time we met, we had an opportunity to reach out and connect with 3 vendors that manufacture wood guardrail systems, and all 3 of them have guardrail systems. They have timber guardrail systems. What they do not offer is a timber bridge rail system. So approach guardrail is something that is an option. It's just we have site conditions and site constraints that would offer some problems with transitioning. We would need a steel rail at the bridge ultimately, and to transition from timber to steel would need a concrete end post that would be constructed at the bridge, and we really don't have the room to install one as such because of the aggressively steep slopes at each of the approaches. It wouldn't be properly embedded and it wouldn't function as intended. I know one of the select members, I think was Selectman Oscarillo, had mentioned the bridge that I think it's Monument Street Bridge over Concord River. We went and took a look at that one. That too has that wood timber approach rail, but it has a steel bridge rail over the bridge with a concrete end post. So that's how that wood rail system was used as a longitudinal barrier off the bridge, but in a similar instance that we would need a steel rail. When we reached out to the 3 vendors, none of them suggested using their product as a bridge rail. One of them, in fact, said they fully endorsed the design as we had proposed as the best solution, and to properly have transition and safety continuity across the way. So that was the research that we had done, and it was consistent with our initial thoughts as far as yes, could you use it, but you couldn't fully accommodate it across the entire crossing, and that was why we ultimately initially steered away from it. But we wanted to go back to appease the select board and get all that information and confirmation from those vendors just to review with everybody. So.
Thank you for doing that. Are there any questions from members of the select board? Questions, sir?
comments.
Well, in the interest of time, unless it's something, that
Well,
I would like to get the motion on the floor about going ahead with the grant applications, but
well,
since
since,
you want to do some brief
Yeah.
comments on what,
I would have been faster if you had just let me say it, then,
yes.
oh, you're telling me this. I didn't find any of these, pictures acceptable. So, personally, I think, I thought we had already authorized this last time. You said contingent on, on not being able to do a wood guardrail, in my opinion. We are not able to do a wood guardrail, so it seems to me that we already have that motion, unless this is a different motion.
We didn't actually vote to file the grant
She
application.
was gonna investigate.
The wood rail first.
And then the board would make a final decision on whether to go with one or both.
We had said we'd go ahead with the curb street no matter what.
No, we said- yeah, we said we'd do-
Maple Street.
Right, and we said we authorized the Maple Street to be done if it was not possible to do a wood rail. So, seems to me it's done, but I'll be happy to make the motion, unless somebody else.
No, go ahead.
Okay,
No, it should, yeah, no, I don't know.
no,
So we're going, so it would be to do the original, right?
Coated,
That's basically what we're,
the powder coated
yeah.
brown.
the brown one.
Move that the select board authorize TEC engineers to file construction grant applications for the Curve Street and Maple Street bridges with the Massachusetts Small Bridges Program no later than April 1st.
Second?
Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll take a roll call vote. Arnold, I.
Oscar Lilloye?
Brown eye?
Odell, aye.
Read aye.
Thank you very much. And
Yeah, thank you.
thank you, Jody, for being here. And we're looking forward to moving ahead.
Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks, thanks, Jody.
All right, hi, Scott.
Give
Yeah.
it time.
It'd be early on the agenda.
Yeah, pull up a microphone. Some of the folks on the Zoom call are having difficulty hearing, so if you can pull that up fairly close. That's on, I see, which is great. So Scott is here as the chair of the ARPA committee, and Keith is here as well, another member of the committee. It was John, is John Kaufman joining? You got a call. Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome, John.
But I will note, I did not post this as an ARPA committee meeting, so we won't be deliberating or discussing. The goal here is to update the committee on our recommendations and also determine what the appropriate next steps are. Because I'm either excluding grant approvals or we're at a stage in the process where we're kind of feeling our way through. So what I provided in the packet was a list of the recommendations, and there's two stages, two motions we can discuss tonight. One is at a higher level. As a committee, we voted to recommend that we allocate all of our coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds to revenue replacement under the standard allowance option. That option allows towns to take up to $10 million in ARPA funds and claim them as revenue loss. We obviously are below that threshold, so we can allocate all of our funds to that category. And by doing that, there's two benefits. One is it's streamlined and minimal reporting required to the ARPA portal, which is good from an administrative standpoint. I'm talking with Kelly Buyer about that. And the second option is it gives us maximum flexibility. We can use the funds on any government service. So anything that the town of Carlisle would consider as a government service we can spend money on. You don't have to worry about all those eligibility criteria and all the reporting that goes with each different criteria. So by allocating those funds, and we spent some time as a committee discussing this, looking at the requests that have come in, figuring out is there anything that would fall outside of this bucket? I think the net opinion is that the benefits of doing this outweigh the risks of down the line something coming across as an opportunity that might fall outside the scope. And so we do have to file an April report for the ARPA portal, and you do have to declare if you're using revenue replacement, which method and how much. And you have one shot to do it. So our recommendation is put it all there and then move forward. And everything we recommend would, as our current understanding is eligible under that. There's still some questions on the margins, but it seems that the Treasury is given very wide latitude in how you use those funds. So that would be the first piece, would be us requesting that the select board motion one here. I made some motions up just as a starting point on its recommendation. Pass those around.
Is this one package?
There's just one page.
One page.
So motion one would be focused on that. The second motion would be surrounding the recommendations we provided. That was in the packet. As a committee, we've reviewed all the submissions that have come in. We've essentially categorized them yes, no. Parking lot, which is we do support, but there are some unknowns or there are some expenses that are not due yet, but in spirit we support them. And then TBD are items that are just we're kind of kicking down the line a little bit here because of some other moving parts, or we just don't have sufficient information. So I think tonight we wanted to focus on what we recommend, and what we would need to do from a process standpoint is ultimately the select board has to approve the use of these funds. And what would happen would be from a process and an auditing standpoint, once a project was approved, the ARPA funds are in a separate account. Kelly would create a project for each approved project in the ARPA account. That invoices would come from be associated with that project, and so essentially that's what we would use for the audit at the end of the year. So what we do ultimately need though for anything is approval of the select board. And so we've deliberated and come up with these recommendations. I know our time is limited tonight. I'm happy to very quickly go through some of these, but ultimately, we'd be looking for approval on those items.
I just have one question for Scott, and that's the question about the projects having to be done under federal.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
So, of course, nothing is as easy as you would hope, and I think the wrinkle in all this that we're currently working through is that if you use ARPA funds for any project, the project is subject to federal procurement guidelines. So, one of the projects that we're recommending, with the caveat of needs to meet federal procurement rules, is the rooftop unit at Gleason, which has already been ordered and procured. However, when that procurement happened, it was not using federal guidelines because it already happened. And so I'd asked Kelly, I know Tim, we had started this conversation of, is there any allowance? Can you have a project grandfathered in? I think the answer is going to be no. And so in which case we would not be able to use ARPA funds for that project. However, there are other projects in the infrastructure pipeline, such as elevator repair, which is $125,000. I think as a committee, what we would do is, if we either find a project does not meet those guidelines, or if the expense would be significantly higher because we need to meet federal guidelines, I think we would just look to deploy those funds in a different way. Even though it's not necessarily directly related to the pandemic, that's fine. I think we would say, well, if we can't do the RTU for these reasons, why don't we do the roof? And then we would come back and do it. But it's something that we're going to be beating that drum with the facilities committee, the school. Everybody needs to know if we're doing if we're using ARPA funds or plan to, it needs to meet federal guidelines, and we need to be aware of what those are, which I'm not, and that the project meets that. And in some cases, it may meet it, but in the case of the RTU, it was done under chapter.
Green community legislation.
Green communities legislation.
Conservation part. I don't think it's
Right.
equivalent.
And you didn't have to put it out the bid, and federally made it too bid. There's all this stuff. So we're sussing through that. I think CLA has been helpful. I know Kelly has been in contact with them to answer questions that we have as they come up, the consulting side and the audit side. So again, I think we're getting the answers we need. In some cases, there's not clear answers. So in this one, my hope is that there's ultimately a grandfather provision or something, but it's still a bit of a moving target. But we're doing our best to make sure that everything's buttoned up and done properly.
So Scott, what I interpret you saying is, let's say you decided a project qualifies. You move PFAS contamination. Sure. You have not gone out to bid for that. Right. You're authorizing an amount of money. Right. Upward more, it's more money you'll probably get. You're gonna go through a procurement process that is consistent with federal government.
Yeah.
Is it like FARs, federal acquisition regulations?
I mean, I think this is my cursory review of it. I mean, there's, depending on the project size, there's requirements that you have at least 2 bids or things like
But
that.
where do you, I mean, I do that for a living. As far as this stuff.
Right, right.
What are you gonna do here?
I mean,
You bought under federal guidelines before?
Not really, it's supposed to be uniform guidance. Close to,
That's
Yeah,
a
procurement law.
slim down version.
yeah. But Kelly was investigating,
yeah.
particularly in this case.
And obviously with Tim's transition,
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
But it's something that needs to be though, that we need to put that on our list.
I'll
Both
volunteer
our
there.
interim and our next, TA.
yeah, and I think it's gonna be incumbent on, you know, whoever's putting it out to bid. I mean, I don't think Vision Art Committee,
No, we got it, no, but on the admin side, you got
yeah,
it.
we have to, and
So let me go through that. That
but
was,
to your question, I think if it came in higher, what we would probably do is just bring it back to this committee to approve a higher amount. Because all these funds, what's required to deploy the funds is simply select board approval.
Okay.
There's no other steps.
because the money's already there. It's just how you.
We have half the money, half the 1.56
Right, and
million.
we're only half of that is what we brought.
Right, and so, you know, we were talking about how do we do contingencies, we want to build them in. You know, a lot of these don't really need contingencies, but in the case of it's a PFAS project and it's 10.5 and it comes in at 18.6, we just come back and just. we can do it on the normal-
By that time, you've done it.
and that could be on the normal select board cycle.
So, and then it comes in lower, you have left over.
You wouldn't-
You just
Yeah,
Put it back
you
in.
wouldn't spend it.
you just put it back in. Right.
What's important is that there's the clear trail from select board approval to the ARPA funds to the expenditures. And so it doesn't need to meet.
The next set of questions, you got, yes, no, immediate question. First of all, everything on the list would qualify under this umbrella. Not on merit, but on.
Not necessarily the ones that, so people have said that the town could give money directly to a nonprofit. I do have questions around the scope of that. So for example, there are the requests from like the chamber orchestra, and even I have questions about Benfield in terms of the town giving money directly to another entity. The Carlisle Cultural Commission is one that is not an issue because they are on our ledger, but everything else, anything that would fall under a department, is eligible.
So you didn't cite reasons like.
Right. And not in the notes, no.
Yeah.
I will say this, I mean, I will quickly say that, in most cases, the no's were items that, were submitted under, everything submitted was under the original eligibility criteria. The no items generally fall into 2 categories. One, they were what we deem as an operating expense that should go through the normal budget process, or a capital expense that should go through the normal budget process, or premium pay. That's most of the police and fire ones. The chamber orchestra, there we decided that we would rather give a little extra fund to the Carlisle Cultural Commission and they can support this. The Board of Health had requested a few different things. We supported initially in the parking lot future vaccination expenses and making sure we have some funds for that. There was a request for increased hours. That again was stuff that really felt like it should go through the budget process. So those are generally the reasons why things were deemed, and then obviously Benfield requests were.
So if we approve the yeses, then that's done. The parking lot will come to a future ask, or is that?
So there's 2 parking lot items. One is, so the Board of Health is for a clinic that doesn't exist yet. So we can come back to that one. I think we would eventually kind of reserve funds, and we're not close to spending what we have, but we would want to make sure we have those funds available. And then I think the rental assistance for seniors, there we were, waiting for feedback from the affordable CPA and affordable housing, which we started, but we as a committee haven't voted on it in our committee, and so that's one where I don't know, Kate, if you have a perspective on this, but that's one where my view is our committee will support that. We have in our discussions, but that might be one we come back in a couple of weeks, or I don't know if there's a good view on that. But I think our committee will end up recommending funds for that amount.
Okay, and then those are done, made a decision, right? And then the TBDs will be some later time, more information.
Yeah, and we're already, I think as a committee, we'll be going out and saying, we're now looking, we're now taking submissions again with a modified format because we're not doing this whole eligibility thing. And I already know of two things that, Wayne Davis, we're looking at probably something for the town meeting or voting. And I know the school might be looking for some funds to update the HVAC study. So there will be additional things. And then my view is infrastructure and capital items will be a good opportunity for these funds in fiscal 2023.
So that, yeah, so my last question to that. We're being pretty conservative in our spend, probably because there's some big ticket items out there.
Yeah, and I would say, I wouldn't classify this as being conservative. I think we don't want to spend money for the sake of spending money. I think, I think we're certainly not being conservative with our approach to supporting the COA. And you've seen the universe of requests. So I think we're actually able to cover off on a lot of the social, mental, emotional support pieces, as you see here. Yes, we're not saying today we're going to fund a giant HVAC project, but partly I think, we have time to do that. And so I would envision at the end of the day, when all is said and done, a lot of these funds will get to the projects. But we do want to make sure that I'm very comfortable with the amount recommended here as it relates to the 50% we already have in pocket and our ability to meet needs in the next 6 months. I think once we get that second deposit and we see what the fiscal year is looking like and how the pandemic's progressing, then we can do a little more with it.
Anything one second?
I just want to add that we kind of, this is sort of like a test case. We'd like to get rolling on a project or two because we're going to have to develop also some grant language, just like CPA has, where whoever gets those funds will have to acknowledge that it's a grant and that they have some, obligations to it. And because that was another thing that, do you guys want to be responsible for that, or do you want us to do that, or where should that rest? And then also kind of feeling our way again. So we, for instance, you'll see there's two motions on here, like more of a consent agenda type of motions, or just like harkening back to our warrants, and our articles, just like a lump sum, and then it would cover these things, or do you want, when you do your motions, you want an individual like that? How does the select board want to do that?
I think it's fine, think of it as a lump sum, and then, if it's spelled out like this, we don't need to approve each individual one unless somebody's got issue.
But I think I'm assuming from a accounting standpoint, if the project is coming in way over, it can't just, it would still be subject to these projects. Right?
Yes, yeah, that's what we would, actually, I would say the ARPA committee, if we had a block grant from you guys, so to speak, then I think we would want to have it very clearly.
Well, and then ultimately we want the project tracked, by Kelly, and when we're doing that in it. Again, the big concern is not ARPA reporting, it's just the regular audit. And that's what we're doing all this for.
Yeah. And it sounds like you're also in the process of figuring out the sort of grant agreement you want to have with the individual projects. projects that are approved, will there be you're thinking about sort of how do you get interim reports from them to see if, if their expectation was they were gonna get X amount done, for this amount of money, rather than waiting till suddenly they're running short and having to come back. Do you have you thought about kind of interim? I don't want to make it cumbersome, but some way that they're providing you some feedback on where they are in the project. Well, maybe not so much the smaller ones, but certainly some of the bigger ones.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna have to do some work with the cultural commission. I know they do a lot of their own internal tracking so we want to get, obviously visibility into that. The infrastructure projects, obviously, people want updates and, don't want to do details, but we want to know what's the bidding process. Some of these others, I think from the COA, some of like the mental health, I think certainly we want to look at housing, periodic check-ins, how's enrollment going according to plan, what kind of results are you seeing? And they're going to be, and we talked to Joan about this, they're going to be collecting that information anyway, because part of the goal for us doing this now is that they can demonstrate that it works, so that they can then go get grants from other sources. And so
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a little bit of a case-by-case basis. And like conservation land signs, I assume it's just.
Yeah, right.
They're the signs.
We'll see them.
But nutrition support, I think we'll just have to work it out with each
one.
group. Because I think the projects are going to be sufficiently different.
Yeah. Nathan, anything you wanted to say, ask about?
Nope. Thank you very much.
I will say, if we're doing anything that's not correct, we will just come back and,
Yeah.
we're trying to figure out the right way to do all this and properly. And if something changes or we didn't approve things in a proper way, we'll come back and do it.
This is why we're here all the time, by the way, because, we're kind of, groping in the dark here, and we'd like to have, to be.
Somebody else groping along with
Yes,
you, while
exactly.
taking some.
And I do think with the, as we transition, I do think in general, this should be something that the town administrator and town accountant are regularly involved in, because we're leaning on them a lot. So, as we onboard the interim, we're gonna have to onboard them for this. My expectation is that they'll be able to help out, certainly with procurement, and some of these technical questions.
You certainly have comfort with it, Steve.
Yes.
Who is, wealth of experience.
Right, so we're happy to have them at our meetings, but understand why, we're in a transition right now, so some of these answers are. Again, the regulations and interpretations are evolving. I mean, webinars, it's all, so we're just trying to keep on top of it. But by doing the revenue replacement, we need to do the revenue replacement first. But by doing that, it does give us wide line.
Yeah. All right, well, so let's move to that first motion about revenue replacement. We'd like to make that motion.
I move to approve to allocate all coronavirus fiscal recovery, aka ARPA funds, $1.569 million to replace lost public sector revenue using the standard allowance option.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? I'd like to call for a roll call vote. Arnold, aye.
Hospital,
Brown eye.
Well,
Reed, aye. All right, the motion carries. And the second motion, please.
One is kind of a lump sum, and the other kind of a consent.
So, lump sum, we give you the budget, you by the individual projects, you do any keep track.
Yes, and in this case, you actually see the, and I think we would always give you a million, which is.
Yeah, I think we'd like.
It's
We'll take the number
We'd like to
one,
say that.
31.
It's, okay, the difference, let me tell you what the difference is. Remember with the MFC, you know, when they had, you know, so much money for this project and so much money for that project, and then one project went over, and then you couldn't slosh it. That's why we prefer, really would prefer this, but if you're not comfortable with it, we wanted to have, we give you an alternative.
Right, so your preferred motion is the first one. Yeah.
And my only concern is that we have the appropriate auditing, accounting controls in place.
Right.
As long as that works, and if it doesn't, we'll just come back and do the new wording.
Okay. You wanna make that motion?
Sure.
Okay.
I move to approve the expenditure of ARPA funds not to exceed $329,237. The recommended projects as presented by the ARPA committee. Engine, Mines,
Second.
All right, any discussion?
I will just point out that does include, that total does include the two future, the two parking lots.
Yeah.
The rental assistance and the future.
you now approve that.
So those would be on.
We have to get a second.
those would be on yours. Okay,
Somebody
sorry.
second?
Yeah, Luke seconded.
Oh.
So, yeah, just to
I
clarify.
just want to ask a quick question. So the way it was framed, I totally get it. It's the way the municipal facilities committee did it. But so the idea is that it can be expended on one of those things, or if one of them goes under and another goes over, it can be expended on the other one, but you're not adding another project in, right?
Correct.
Okay, because I thought it said like such as.
There's no, this would be, you would only be supporting the identified projects.
Just the yeses and the parking lots.
That's correct.
Okay, okay.
All right, any other comments? Discussion? Great, Corinne.
I do have a question. Sorry.
You don't get to have.
Can I ask a question? No, I mean, if say like we find out, oh, you know, online mental health is going to be twice as many people, it's going to be $50,000, and say we haven't done another project or it's come under, who's the authority to say?
Yeah,
I just want to make sure the budget totals have some teeth in them.
Yeah, so I think, so like, it's very similar to CPA in a lot of respects. So, you know, I think the grant agreements make sense. We can write those. I mean, some of ours are very specific. It's a bit more liberal. I mean, like the housing, for example, it's fairly liberal to give a little bit of flexibility. We do annual reporting. You know, I mean, that works for us. It's probably, you know, do more than that. But also, too, we assign a liaison on some of the larger projects. You know, I mean, you're always looking for free, but maybe you reach out to some other
Yeah, well,
folks.
since I'm also on MFC, I need to be liaison
Yeah.
to the
I
MFC.
think if you look at the list, there's only a couple that have the potential for going crazy.
So,
No, I mean, it's.
No, right. But the thing is, it's, you know, the one benefit that CPA has, we release funds. Right?
Right,
You know, so I just think the monitoring piece, you know, for you guys is critical.
You're gonna release before.
Well,
Or do they get an expense account in town?
They would get so my understanding is money's in an account. Kelly will know these projects, the invoice will come in, it'll be paid out of that
So
account.
she's got that account, and she'll know how it's going.
And she'll know who the point person is on the project and where it should be coming from. It's a question.
So she'll get approval. But we don't have like select board sign. Once she gets the invoice.
that's a big aspect of monitor all these.
yeah.
I mean,
she would, I think, what I think is, I know on the MFC, for instance, as the vice chair, I sign the invoices after they've been approved by the committee. So I would say that maybe those invoices would come to the ARPA committee for signature
As long
before
as
she
it's-
pays it.
Again, I'm not,
no, exactly, just to make sure that, because you guys are much like everything else that you get. You make sure it's in compliance with what's in the grant agreement. Okay. And then you approve it, then she doesn't have to.
Right, but does she have, in that case, Luke, does she have to track like $125,000 to affordable housing.
Yeah, so
She's got a department code that.
She's gonna be setting up project codes each one.
Yes.
Yeah,
She still has to do that, just. to-
Yes,
Yeah.
that she has to do.
and that'll make the audit much easier. It's a straight line right to the actual inputs. Again, we'll be talking with her about this. This is my conversation with her. If this changes or evolves, we'll.
Okay, good, so we have.
And I guess I just also want to assure you, we are being, conservative might be one word, but I would say we're being cautious because, and that's why we keep on coming back to, because every time we learn something new, we want to check with you guys about, how do you want us to handle that? You want us to do it, you want to do it, you want somebody else to do it, it's like building an airplane while it's already in the air.
Okay, no, and just, for example, you brought up the cultural thing, right? Ultimately, if they go through the 10, they could just submit another one, right? Yeah. For an additional 10 or 20, right? So, and with it being an ongoing process, I think that would be the recommendation, right? If you see that you guys are going over, then just submit another
I wish you
application.
had a different request with about.
Yeah.
And I just look at it as because we have so much flexibility, this is almost like I view it as almost another revenue source, and we should be as diligent, although we're using it in a different manner than we should be as diligent with this spend as we would be with tax revenue spend. So, we don't want to just, we have money, let's spend it. No, because we can use this on anything. So let's use it on the right things.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for the second. Any other discussion? All right, let's do a roll call vote then. On the motion to approve the expenditure of the ARPA funds not to exceed $220,000. Arnold, aye.
Oscar Lilo,
Brown eye.
Well,
You die.
Excellent.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, all three of you. Thank you,
Yeah.
John.
Thank you,
And
federal
Scott
government.
and Kate, yeah, thank you, federal government. back
Well, the only time you can hear me say that.
Yeah.
Well, even then, I appreciate the federal government
Yeah.
making all these stupid rules, but anyway.
All right.
I know you enjoyed it so much, Scott.
Yeah.
well, can we put a microphone on there?
Right, there you go.
That's a $70,000 mic.
Is it? I think it'd be wireless.
Audio.
I'm trying to make it wireless.
Yeah, that's what some people are, it's like Nathan was saying too. Yeah.
Are you hearing us better now, Nathan, trying to test?
But now we're not hearing you.
I'm hearing some of you better. Barney, you keep cutting in and out a lot. I'm not sure if you're like directly in front of it, but it does appear to be a little better. I have the volume all the way up.
Yeah, the levels are fine, and Mark is saying it's broadcasting fine, so I'm not sure.
We're not sure what the problem is. Everything seems to be good with Minuteman, so our apologies to those of you who can't hear very well. We are going to continue on. Tim, do you have someone here from Lionsgate? Or where are we on?
We do not, evidently, there are no show, however, town council is on the line, we do have to open the public hearing, town council is on the line, also the co-chair of planning board.
Okay.
Developers met with the planning board last week, and I think you all can shed some light on what happened with that meeting. It's not clear if they're going forward or not, it may not be. But we do have to technically open the hearing.
Okay.
Is that correct, council? You know, on here. Proceed.
You're muted, Chris.
Sorry about that. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
So I'm happy to answer any questions. I know that it sounds as though the proponent of the street acceptance is not with you tonight, but it's my understanding that last week the planning board voted unanimously not to recommend acceptance of this street as a public way. I think on two grounds.
Can I interrupt for just 1 second, Chris?
Sure.
Is this a public hearing?
Yes. Let me make a motion.
Do we need to open the public hearing?
You need to open the hearing, formally open the hearing, Chris.
Yes,
Yes.
that's a good.
I'm sorry, Chris.
Oh, no, thank you. I appreciate it.
I move to open the road layout hearing for Lionsgate scheduled for March 22nd, 2022 at 7:30 PM at Carlisle Town Hall, Clark Room 66 Westwood Street.
Second,
Thank you.
Second.
thank you. All right, so now we can continue the discussion. Chris, let me go back to you. And I also know that, Pete, I see you on the phone, right? Pete? Are you gonna be speaking for the planning board? You're muted too, Pete. Pete, there you go.
I'll answer questions that the memo don't address or that Chris doesn't address.
Okay, so shall we begin with Chris then, Pete?
Sure.
I missed that.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Sure. So it's my understanding that the planning board voted unanimously last week to not recommend acceptance of the road as a public way for at least two reasons. One of which was that the planning board had requested a new inspection of the road to be funded by the proponent, and that didn't happen. And two, I think there's some outstanding questions as to who will manage and maintain the drainage system for the roadway, which in the case of this subdivision, I think is a new and unusual, at least in the town's experience, form of drainage system that may not be within the town's ability to maintain, at least as of right now. So I think Peter can certainly elaborate if I've misstated anything that the board did, but I think on those two, based on those two reasons, the board voted to not recommend acceptance of the public way.
Pete, do you want to add to that?
No, Chris was accurate. Nothing to really add. I think it's well defined in the memo.
What percentage of the development is completed? Is it 100% completed?
That's correct. I think all the
Perfect.
lots, I believe all the lots have been built on.
Okay, thanks.
And, oh, go ahead.
Pete, when the plans came in and showed this drainage, were any questions brought up at the time of the approval to the developer?
Katie, you're gonna have to repeat yourself. It's really broken audio.
Sorry. When the plans came forward for approval for the subdivision plans, were you aware of this drainage issue, and was that at all discussed before approving the plans?
I think, again, just referring back to the memo, it's pretty well defined that this development has gone through several owners. So the initial owner probably had more detailed knowledge. And then subsequently, as people buy it, do they read all the fine print? It's hard to say.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Yes, please.
Chris, is the board under any obligation to keep this on the warrant? A vote be accepted at town meeting, given it's negative planning board recommendation, they're not show at the hearing?
It is not. And I was thinking about this afternoon as I was getting ready for the meeting. I think the board could take any of a couple of different approaches here, although in my experience, it would, I think, be unusual for to move forward with acceptance of a public way where the planning board hasn't recommended approval. But and if the board is not inclined, if the select board is not inclined tonight to move forward with the acceptance of the street as a public way, I think the best approach would be to remove this article from the warrant. In order to accept the road as a public way, we need to have both the select boards vote to approve the layout and a town meeting vote to approve the warrant article. If the first step is if the board is not inclined to support that first piece, I don't see any reason to leave it on the warrant. The only exception to that would be as if this was a citizen's petition, but it's my understanding that this was, and Tim, you can please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that this did not come before the board in the form of a citizen's petition warrant article.
All right, so as a board, then, do we need to take a vote on whether or not to approve, we have a motion in here about, so it sounds like, according to Chris, the select board needs to vote whether or not we accept it as a,
Normally, you would.
We'll close the hearing.
You close the hearing, and you recommend the laying out of whatever the named way is, and then it goes forward to town meeting. In this case, you're not doing that. So I don't know, I don't know, is a vote necessary first, or just close the hearing and take no action?
The board could either take no action, and I think direct town council and Tim to not move forward with the placement of this on the warrant, or it could affirmatively vote instead to not lay the town out, not lay the road out as a town way. I don't think there's any real practical difference between either of those two approaches, and neither one, I don't believe, would prejudice the property owner's ability to come back 6 months or a year from now if they want to take another crack at this. So yeah, so I think you can close the public hearing and take no action, or you can close the public hearing and vote not to lay the road out as a public way. And if taking no action is the easier of the two, then I think that's the perfectly fine approach.
I guess my preference would be since the planning board heard this and took a vote, I would think that we should probably do the same, but that's just my opinion.
all right, well, let's close the hearing and then we can figure out the step we want to take.
I move to close the road layout hearing for Lionsgate, which is scheduled for March 22nd, 2022, at Carlisle Town Hall, 66 West.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote of closing the hearing. Arnold, aye.
Right?
No,
Reed, aye. Excellent, the hearing's been closed. So deliberation about, I hear Nathan saying that he would like to see us take a vote of, to reject the petition for Lionsgate to be considered a public way. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's accepting the planning board's
Recommendation.
recommendation to not lay out the way.
So would you like to make that in the form of a motion?
I move that the Board of Selectmen accept the planning board's recommendation not to lay out the way for Lionsgate.
Lionsgate Road as a public way. Is that correct?
Yeah, are we gonna vote again to not? I'm a little confused. So we're just voting to accept the planning board's recommendation? We're not.
Yeah. Well, that in effect is voting against it, isn't it?
no, take our own.
Hold on 1 second. Nathan, what are you saying?
I'm saying that we are in effect voting against laying it out because we're accepting the planning board's recommendation not to. I mean, I'm happy with any kind of a motion.
If I could suggest a friendly revision of the motion, you might frame it as the select board is voting to accept the planning board's recommendation with respect to Lionsgate Road and to not lay the road out as a public way.
So moved.
Second, I think I think we should vote to lay it out and then vote against it, right?
Oh, I see.
think
You have moved
right?
to lay it out.
Move to lay it out and vote nay. Because
I don't I don't think we should, because we're deciding not to lay it out.
Right, and then when they're ready, when they have a revised plan, they come back and they have another public hearing.
They didn't do that anyway, because he said it doesn't.
No, I know, but it's, we're just voting.
Not,
in
we're gonna
concurrence
vote
with-
against the
Right,
layout.
exactly, so we're voting in concurrence with the planning board, we're just not putting the planning board stuff in. It just seems weird that we would. You know what I mean?
I actually like it, it's
I understand
solidarity.
what you're saying.
No, I-
Isn't that what Chris just said, though? Isn't that what Chris's motion just was?
Yeah, because it was based on yours. It's fine either way. It's just, I don't know why we don't just vote to not approve. it, right? Or vote to approve it and vote nay.
I would feel better about putting enough to approve it if there had been a presentation and I got to see the way, but I didn't get to see any information about it. So that, I
Yeah,
think
no,
that's
I-
why
yeah,
I'd rather,
okay.
I didn't vote to accept the recommendation of the. It's- that's
Okay,
another
so,
point of view.
Yeah, no.
okay, so the,
I'll second your motion.
all right, and so, Jen, were you able to catch that, or are you gonna get that from Chris, the motion? Chris, you wanna say that one more time?
Yes,
Sure. Move that the select board vote to accept the planning board's recommendation relative to Lionsgate Road and to not lay out the road as a public way.
Thank you. So that's the motion that's been seconded. Any more discussion? All right, let's go with the roll call vote. Arnold, aye.
Oscar Lilloye.
Brown eye?
well,
Reed, aye.
All right, thank you very much.
And is this now when you would move to not put it on the warrant, or would you wait?
I think we wait till we get to the warrant part of the agenda.
we're not actually voting.
No, we are. We're
Yeah, we're closing the warrant.
Yeah. All right, great. So, let's move on then, and thank you very much, Chris.
Oh, thank you all. Good to see you.
Thank you, Pete. Let's move on.
Good night.
This should be brief, the search update. So I provided you with a memo about, based on our conversations of a couple weeks ago, and then discussions with John from Paradigm and others. And I wanted to just give you all a chance to have any feedback on that. So the proposal in your pocket. Yeah. It is. So as we discussed 2 weeks ago, you know, a 5-person or a 7-person, and then Tim and David and I settled in on the concept of 7 members in our follow-up planning discussion, and then I talked it over with John, and he's comfortable with 7 members. So based on conversations we had and some others I've had, what I'm putting forward here is the presentation or the representation of who would be on the screening committee. So it's 2 department heads. If we can work it out this way, one who works inside town hall and one who does not. One FinCom member, one resident who's active in our school committee. School community, sorry. One board / committee chair who's not from the select board, and one resident with municipal consulting experience or another department head, and then one member of the select board, the chair. So that's the proposed representation on the committee. And I'm not just giving the opportunity here for anyone to offer public comment from the select board.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with it pretty much. I thought we had discussed potentially Jen. Okay, yeah, no, I wondered if anybody asked. Okay, we did. Yeah. Okay.
Any other comments? This is just by way of update, and then the goal is to have the particular, that I will reach out to particular people, fill these slots to determine interest, and then come back to the select board with a proposed group of individuals for us to appoint at our next select board meeting. And I did have a brief conversation with John today, and he said resumes is ready to come in, so that's good news. All righty. Then we're gonna move on to the 3 budget decisions we need to make tonight. The first is about the COLA, the second is about the Board of Health additional hours, and the third is about cemetery fees. So I'm gonna turn it over to Tim, who's written a memo to us about the COLA.
Can I just interrupt for 1 second? I think COLA may be something that people are interested in. Could we just do town administrator report or something for 15 minutes?
I'm sorry, that who might be interested
He
in
wants
it?
to line it up with. the
I want to get it on schedule. So if we could just do town administrator report.
The opposite, oh, okay, you wanna wait on the budget decisions, you're saying.
Why don't we
I just want to do it on the agenda schedule. We're 15 minutes early, and it's COLA is something somebody may be interested in, probably not, but I
Okay.
just don't want anybody saying, hey, you did it ahead of time.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, Tim, are you comfortable? Let's go ahead then and do the town administrator's report for some of those items to get to 8:15. Thank you.
All right, item number 1 is that we heard back from Commonwealth that the regional grant of sustainability coordinator that we found in the town of Westford that was approved and funded. There's a letter in the packet, and as Mike pointed out, it's pretty vague and uninformative. It doesn't even mention town of Carlisle. But in fact, it is a letter because it came to us. And they said, don't announce this, it's gonna be a ceremony. We kind of gonna come on with a cardboard check and embargo this news, so we keep saying it. The event,
Did we just announce it though?
yeah, I guess I'm just announcing it now. The event for this grant, Thursday at noontime in Shelburne Falls, Massachusetts.
Oh, geez, you're
So
kidding.
if you want to see what the bridges
Really let the
and
cat out of the
flowers
bag,
look like at this time of year. So no one is going to be able to make the event, but we did get approved for funding, and trying to meet with the folks on the Western to talk about timing. It's their town meeting in June. They've got to go to town meeting with the revised job description. Get the funding put into the budget. But what's good news for town is it's one of the projects that I met last week to see if you went through that 15 or 20 point on. You used to be town manager in Western. You'll be the one following up with us. That's certainly good news. And they're always a little funny about how to announce it. It's kind of odd.
It's a little awkward actually, because I've just been reviewing some of the comments about the master plan, and of course we do have, the master plan does have reference, to get some sort of a sustainability position, and so Soccer can't talk about it until,
Yeah.
like to
And this
get
took
that
about a
right.
year, or a little more than a year. At some point, make a decision.
Okay, so after Thursday, we can talk about it.
Going forward. Officially, that's what I'm thinking now.
Perfect, because the master plan committee is
Thursday night.
I think it's
evening,
safe,
so we
but
can
I
then,
don't think that-
All right. And so, Tim, this will be a position that is on the Westford payroll. But with the,
Right, they're
And
the
then-
lead community
right,
for the grant. But this individual will have some portion of their hours before the project here in town. So
Okay.
they'll be able to work with the facilities committee and the successor. That person.
right.
Projects that we share that position, but yeah, it will nominally.
Okay. Great, that's great news.
And then you probably got some, Jack Hunter, some recent days about the community education forum next week. CPS 45. But you have similar event last fall. Follow up. To that.
Tim, I'm sorry to do this. I know it's a pain, but the audio is really terrible. Could you just pull the mic next to you closer?
Sure. Again, in the pack, there's an email from Jack Hunters, the chair of the school board about their upcoming community education forum. It's next week on the 30th. I know a few other emails have gone out as well, so the word's getting out on that. Also, in the packet, you have the Chapter 90 letter from the Commonwealth for this year. It's again, 252,000, so no real increase in the Chapter 90 funding to the town. List of projects, the same projects that we had on list last year. We get same amount of funding, same list of projects. Particularly because of all the residents really want to get that done. It's met with them a number of times. They're making an effort to get that done. Board of Health requested an increase in spending limit to their revolving fund. Currently set at $70,000. To increase it to $100,000 for the year. It says a lot to do with the additional work that's been done at Benfield. And without it, they reach the limit on funds that can come into the revolving fund and be expended. So there's a vote required from the Finance Committee and Select Board in order to increase the spending limit the year. And Jim here tonight, I think the Finance Committee took that action last week. Select Board has to as well make it official.
I'll make the motion. I move the select board increase the spending limit for the Board of Health 53E and a half revolving fund from 70,000 to 100,000 for the remainder of fiscal 22.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, so actually, just a quick question. So looking at the different expenses, do they bill out to the client per se? So, because I mean, we want to make sure we get reimbursed. But just out of curiosity, why is there a cap on it? Right? Is there a reason for it?
Town meetings part to set the cap on all of the water.
Yeah.
But it's as a mechanism to increase it during the year.
Yeah, no, it's an up versus in, right? I mean, and it's not like they're spending money to spend it. They're getting reimbursed.
Yeah, right. The money has to come in.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's a way to cap that in case something doesn't come back.
It's part of the Mass General laws.
It is, okay.
Yeah.
But
The
cap
there has to be a cap voted every year for it. And I've recommended the last few years it has been increased, and they do have continuing projects that will go on for next year. So we should probably, I mentioned to Tim and talked with Linda that for FY23, we should increase it to 100,000 because this has been the practice the last few years to go from 70 to a higher number.
Yeah.
So it's really just a cap. You could put it as high and you can really only spend what, you have for an appropriation that comes in, but it's all part of how a Mass General law runs the 4453 E and a half. With that.
So is that 70,000 is the cap? Is the
20,000
master law cap?
That's been the cap, and it's been the cap for the past few years, but the past few years you've increased it at least. Last year, I think it was 90. It went to, you increased it 30,000, but spent 90. And the year before that, it was almost 30,000 more. So
if we're doing this every year, why don't we just say we move
100,000.
the cap from 70 to 100,000 and not
Correct.
say the remainder of
and that
2022?
has been my recommendation for FY23 for them.
Yeah.
Is that a motion?
Jim, come on up, come on up so we can
Is that
hear
in
you.
the articles?
The approval is revolving funds is a motion to like there this month. Amount, so.
Yeah.
Did you hear that, Nathan?
No,
The motions that will be for the
I can't hear you right now.
Okay.
You're really, really
Right.
staticky. There's definitely something wrong with your mic.
We're in the meeting on Zoom, and the audio was so poor. That's why.
Speaking of the mic, if you would, Jim, thanks.
There's
This
one
is Jim
comment.
Dar, chair of the big,
The, you can set whatever was want here. There is more money going in because of the project. And there is a good news story behind the routine vote you're going to take, which is that only 2 weeks ago, there was a concern that the owner of that wouldn't. So they did that. So I think, sometimes it just seems, pro forma, but there actually is something positive here, which is, it seems to be coming through for you. So that's all I want to say.
Yeah, one little piece.
thank you, Jim.
Right.
Right. Okay, so we have the motion on the floor, it's been seconded. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote. Arnold, aye.
Oscalillo, aye.
Brown eye.
Well,
Reed, aye. Thank you.
Next item has to do with timber nuts. Barney and I, do meet with Chair Tenant, timber nut to talk about, the programming and review. Component woods, the capture package, very described in dates and times of the current plan, programming. And, we talked about a potential site visit on April 6th, in the morning and afternoon, maybe both, but the board members want to observe typical drop off and pick up operations in the rear parking lot. I guess since then, we've heard that the parking situation is pretty good lately. Part of the meeting, we agreed to follow up on currently for parking, and they did speak to the fire chief. They'd like to be able to offer additional parking. Working with Sylvia and the Conscom about expanding the parking area back there. We'd be more than happy to make that available if we can expand that parking area.
you see,
Chief Soros.
Chief Sorrows. And also talked to Joan, this whole COA, and she offered the additional parking at the fire station. The drivers could park their vehicles there. They wouldn't leave their car here all day while the drivers van. So that's free up, a little bit of space. So. But at the moment, I guess it would be no availability.
so he made the request, but there's no availability.
Well, we made it with him, and he said, "I'd like to help you, but I'm trying to, I'm trying to expand my parking lot. But I don't have room." Yeah.
He's got nothing in or any budget to it.
I don't think he's got anything from the facility.
So it's a year away.
Yeah, it's probably sometime ago.
And the conversation with Sherry, which really started short run, immediately it was about the parking issues that had been raised at the last meeting with Sherry. But we, both Tim and I thought it'd be a good idea if any of the select board members could make one of these 2 times for a site visit, that we should not only see what the parking looks like, but also just walk in the Conant land, either after 9:15, once the drop off happens, go in and actually see what they're doing, or for the 4 o'clock time, to go in earlier and see what they're doing on land, because I've made it very clear to Sherry that we want to have her come back fairly soon to discuss the program in general and the use of the Conant land. Right now, they have their summer session has already been advertised, and they already have some of the sessions are already full. But I made it clear to her that we are not giving our approval for the fall until she comes back in and we have a full conversation about it. So that's why I think a site visit would be very worthwhile. Are people able to do that? And I know it's a work day, April 5th, 6th is a Wednesday. You could be there, that'd be good. Maybe, it's a maybe, and I know Nathan, some of that depends on where you're working from.
Yeah, I'll need to take a look at my calendar later.
Okay,
So, at what time did you say, sorry.
Well, if you want to do the morning one, I would say come, you know, a little before 9:15, and then plan to stay and finish at the woods. And if you want to do the 4 o'clock, I would say come at 2:30 and walk into the woods so you can see what they're doing. Yeah. I can work this out offline, I think, with everybody. And, you know, Tim, or I can get back to Sharon. All right, great, thank you.
So just in addition to the walk, right, the summer, I'm trying to remember the discussion from a couple of weeks ago, right? It seems like their camp program has grown substantially from what we initially envisioned and approved. And, you know, I mean, I know they booked out the summer, but that, you know, we shouldn't just give them approval for the summer because we haven't had a conversation, right? I mean, and a significant number of residents have raised issues. Right? And I'm not saying that there isn't a solution here, right? But you just say, well, we'll focus on the fall when, you know, we technically haven't really approved the summer.
Or even the session we're running now.
Right, exactly, right. They're
Really, that's the problem.
Yeah.
We have not done our oversight and they have not, you know, come to us.
Yeah, we're both
Yeah.
at fault here, right?
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, at the end, the residents are the ones that, you know, they're the ones being impacted, right? So, I don't know, is there a way to kind of bring it in quicker so we can talk about the summer stuff? I mean, you know, obviously, it's a pain for them if they have to reverse and do all that stuff, but I think if we can get, if we could get the center residents, we could get timbered up and you know, maybe have us some, because it's a communication thing, right? And I'm sure that they can figure out a way to make it work, right? But you know, what's working, what's not. But you know, ultimately, if I feel like we're kind of, you know, poo-pooing the residents on this if we just allow the summer to happen. I mean, and maybe it's okay. You know, unfortunately, this ship has already sailed, right? And at least let the residents know that, and we're going to really fully discuss this before the fall. But I just, you know, I want the residents to be heard. You know what I mean? It's just,
Yeah. I have had follow-up discussions with the nearest abutters
Yeah.
that were here at the meeting 2 weeks ago, and they definitely want to be involved in the sidewalk. And, so I could certainly get back in touch with them, but if there are other central residents that have concerns, maybe we should reach out to them. And I've forgotten what let's see, we haven't looked at the agenda for the April 19th meeting. I don't know if we could move this up. We don't have that agenda in front of us. We just have the proposed April 6th agenda. I mean, sorry, April 5th. I don't remember, I don't know if David, you remember, or Tim, when we thought we would have Timbernook back.
Might be on the.
Why don't we see if we can have it on the 19th? And,
yeah, I won't be good.
okay.
School.
So we're
Spring school
vacation.
vacation.
Yeah, okay. You know, when we get bumped into that first meeting in May, the problem is, every week it goes by.
Yeah, no, exactly, right? Yeah. Or maybe, I don't know. You know. Does it have to be a full select board meeting to have that discussion? And you can have that discussion. Maybe it's bring up the residents and we just report back. Because everybody's kind of got the same goal, right? You know, I mean, you know, I think residents are fine with it. It's the noise and really the noise, right? And just the amount, and then obviously the parking pieces. But you know, I mean, I think I don't know if we necessarily need to have a discussion here.
I think it's kind of outgrown the location personally.
I've gone a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I'm wondering if they couldn't ask the state park, if they could do it, you know, somewhere there. I mean, there's all those acres. Or even if it's not every time here, you know, once it's at the Cranberry Bog and once it's in Conant and once it's in the town forest. I mean, you know, we could be accommodating, but so that they wouldn't have to do what you're talking about, all the refunds and stuff, but not being impacting one
Area
all the time.
Yeah.
So I think we could think out of the box and get some solutions to the problem.
we also raised with Sherry, that, you know, we've been allowing use of Conant with no return from them, no expectation of any fee return. But she said they are doing well enough that she definitely thinks it's appropriate for them to think about making some kind of donation.
I'm sorry, to do what, Barney?
To make some kind of a donation, contribution back to the town, whether that's, you know, scholarships for Carlisle, you know, students or some other form, but that she thought it was very appropriate that Tim would make some kind of contribution back to the town.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be great. I think for me, it doesn't eliminate the fact that they've kind of outgrown that spot.
Yeah, I would, yeah, I think if it's possible for people to go see, or maybe everybody has, but if people have not been there, I think it would really be helpful for all of us to, you know, see what they're using right now, what space, what part of the land that has been affected. And Luke, what I'm hearing you say is that we ought to convene the people in town that have concerns or, you know, issues with Sherry from Timbernook and a couple of select board members and try to do that between now and the April 19th
Yeah,
select board meeting. Yeah, yeah, all right. I think that's possible to do. Any other comments on this?
Okay, then we have the draft agenda for April 5th. Expect to be on Saturday, then, oh, look at that, it's dark here.
You coming back for that one?
Yeah, I might zoom into that one.
Yeah.
Entertainment value, get your popcorn for that computer.
That's just barking.
No.
Nobody could fit. And we're gonna meet later this week to go over the setting the next one. See if it's gonna be, in progress. Well, our meetings are the 5th and the 19th in April. Budget is 11.
And
I know I have a note on my other computer about those agendas, that there was one of them I wanted to add something on it, so I will go home.
Okay.
I'll give you an email about it. I was gonna mention it tonight, but I left the notes.
And I-
The audit report, I think, remember that from earlier today?
right.
Yeah.
And I just want to point out on the next, the agenda for April 5th, that's when we're gonna, as a select board, discuss our positions on this warrant article. So we're not doing that tonight. And we'll figure out who's gonna, you know, put forward which ones.
Unless you want to vote support, in the article, but you're going to be publishing the warrant, you know, the finance committee. That's in order to make the public,
Right.
the publication.
Well, why don't we go back to the budget decisions we need to make, let's do those, and then as we go through the warrant articles,
Yeah.
if there are ones that we know right now we are ready to support and would like to get that information in the book. Okay. So we have,
There's no one right now, I'm fine.
oh, sorry,
Yeah, but
the appointment of
Before you're done with your last
Dan Cook.
two.
to the
That's
TSEC.
right, that's right.
Yeah.
Just from the wire, we got a. Forward to the State Action Committee, 2 others of them. No people, no can't talk.
I move we appoint Dan Cook to the TSAC committee. How long is the appointment for? For 1 year? Okay. So that would be to January, sorry, June 30th, 2023.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call vote. Arnold, aye.
That's the one.
Ryan abstain. I couldn't hear it.
Well,
Reed, aye.
Sorry, that was about appointing Dan Cook to the Transfer Station Action Committee.
Oh, okay. I would certainly support that. Aye.
Thank you, Nathan. All right, so we're now gonna go to the fiscal 23 budget decisions. So first up is the setting the non-union COLA. And we have a memo from Tim in our packets. Tim, do you want to just give us a brief?
This is an updated memo from a few months ago. Some information recently, particularly, well, first off, there was a chart in your packet that we actually, Kate and I developed for the police negotiations to explain how the town goes about setting the COLA for non-union folks. And we explained that, the board pays particular attention to the increase in the social security index and CPI, and then we demonstrated for the past 10, 11 years, the town's COLA has exceeded the average of both of those economic indicators. In fact, we could have gone back 30 years. The town has never given a COLA less than 30 years. But that was part of the rationale talking to the union that, it's something to consider that the town has done pretty well by its employees, considering the lack thereof. Knowing that recent trends indicate, they could have an inflationary period, so in future years, we should say that the number would be, but my recommendation to the board is that you go for 2.25% COLA for this fiscal year. Based upon the indicators that both CPI, Social Security. I think back in December we had maybe 9 towns, on their COLAs. And now we've got 65 communities, and the average COLA is 2.1%. So slightly north of 2. And I think justified for this year. That's my recommendation to the board.
Have the motion to that effect in our packets.
I move that the board approve the cost of living adjustment of 2.25% for fiscal year 2023 for all non-union and non-contracted town employees.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Nathan, did you hear the motion this time?
I did hear the motion. Yes, thank you for checking.
Just checking, just because we.
All right. There's no discussion. I'd like a roll call vote, please. Arnold, aye.
Councilman Lloyd,
Brown eye.
Rita.
Thank you.
Welcome, notice that the town accountant's already got all the the salary and wage chart anticipated perhaps in the book. So that's good news.
You don't want to make extra work with Kelly. She's going to have to chase on ARPA.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be sure. Yeah. Sure.
All right, and then the on the Board of Health hours, David, do you want to review the chart that you prepared, and maybe we should first put a motion on the floor? Sense. Although actually, Tim, if I recall, in your didn't you suggested a slightly different motion,
I
right?
recommend you prefer with finance committee tax.
Let's go through it.
Okay. Yeah, so why don't you go through it, David? That'd be great.
So, two-part thing, right? The notion of needing more assistance. The Board of Health has come up before this committee basically twice in the recent years. For a variety of reasons, we have not supported it. So we did a little, I guess, analysis with Linda and with Tony Marino, chair. In fact, I sent one, I send one note to the other one. Anyway, So it goes back, and Jim, this will be your recollection as well. Our understanding is, and it's in the chart, I don't know if you have that chart, Jim. Okay, before the COVID time, pre-2019, there were 2 part-time assistants at 15 hours each. With 30 hours, we got no benefits. And so that's our baseline. And then in 2019, the proposal was to make 1 full-time job for 1 day, which would be 24 hours with benefits. Actually, it was proposed, I think, to be 30 hours with benefits. At least what Board of Health is saying is that FinCom said, okay, but you have to pay for the benefits out of your budget. Therefore, reduce the hours from 30 to 24. So the big difference between the 2 columns is budget neutral, but minus 6 hours of actual hours. Is that at all according to your recollection, Jim?
No.
Okay. That you don't remember, or you don't think that's?
Well, all I can really speak to is their total budget.
Yeah.
Which for the current year is up 14%.
No, that's separate. This is just about this.
That also is driven by hours instead. So, however
It's
they.
up how much percent?
14, the current.
And it's all labor. It's all extra. Are you including what the CARES funds paid for?
No, because that's outside of the county.
Then I don't know. This is the story you're telling.
Well, I don't mean to contradict it, except that was why when they asked for a similar increase for fiscal 23, our committee didn't support that. However, more recently, in some other conversations and understanding the select board was concerned about their staffing, we did add the 10,000 back.
Right, and that came out of probably this kind of discussion, which was they were down 6 hours and they were being asked to include benefits in their budget, where most departments, are not asked to.
We never said that.
So I don't
We
know.
never said it anything.
Okay, so then I don't know what else is.
I mean, we know it's a real factor, but we don't.
Of course, right, okay. So the story this
I
chart
think
tells
that,
is,
since I was at all those, FinCom meetings at the time, but they were asked to have a budget neutral, okay? Which meant that they had to cut the hours in order to keep the budget the same. That did not the same as saying we were asked to pay for the wrong.
well, no, it is, because I guess.
No, because they changed the position. So this is the whole thing that, they changed the position, right? So they made it basically just hired an administrative assistant position, right? And then, so then they went back to personnel board, I believe, and they increased the salary. Right? And the idea was that the person was supposed to be able to do a lot more than just a general. And we said, fine, because they did this whole presentation, we said, fine, as long as it's budget neutral. Right? And the way for them to make it budget neutral was to drop the number of hours. But again, when, the whole idea was that if they're getting more qualified person, they're going to be able to do that. And then also too, kind of the sell that they were saying is that it's very disjointed, right? That one person doesn't know what the other person's doing, right? So it all makes sense, right? And I, the goal here, I don't think has ever been to not give them the support that they need. I still don't know what they need. And I think that's the confusing piece, is that and yes, it continuously changes, and obviously COVID has been, a tough kind of shift in everything. But it's like the 2 positions went to 1, then the 1 needed more hours, now the 1 needs more hours. It's like, I want to support this as much as, I think everybody should be fully funded, right? Everybody should be fully supported, right? But again, it's what exactly, if there's just a cost, right, to 10, right? Are they going to come back next year and say, well, that wasn't enough for you? Right? We've been facing this for at least the past 3 or 4 years, right? I just want to solve it, right? I mean, it seems like it's just this continuous thing. Right?
Let's make 3 technical points.
Yeah.
One is that no town department carries their fringe benefits in their line item budget. Now, nor are they ever asked to, even though maybe they should be, but that's not the way it works. Secondly, when they proposed this originally, it was to split between their intense account of 53 account and the town budget, which is has been happening in the past. And thirdly is that remember that when the town meeting approves their budget line, they actually have freedom to spend that as they wish within certain things you've established about positions, but they have a lot of flexibility in how they do it. You know, in the end, we as a community don't vote, you know, person A versus person B.
Well,
Yeah.
there, on, just on the, I guess on the one, I can't obviously then, you know, since it appears that what I wrote, other people don't remember the same way that I didn't do it by memory because I wasn't involved. Sort of note taking, but their current ask, if you will, does have to do with an increased public health. You could say, in fact, a lot of it was COVID driven, and they got a CARES funding of 6 hours this year, last year before that activity. That's going away, but they don't see the need going. From my view, I don't have enough of the history to base it, but it certainly seems to me that with increased tick-borne diseases, COVID, and whatever's going on in the future years with COVID, so forth, there would be an increased, you know, need for support. That's as far as I can take it. So I'm sensitive to that, but I am their rep. It's a little bit of Stockholm syndrome that goes on sitting this. You know, I acknowledge it.
No, and you know, and the thing is, I know it seems like I've always been against this, and I'm not.
Not
Right?
really.
I just want, you know,
I'm right.
we should just be able to figure this out. You know, and the other thing too is this 53.5 stuff. I mean, it was when we were on Constown, we did the same, and that always ends up in, right? It always, you know, because I can't support it, right? And they shouldn't have to, right? So I mean, it should be, you know, we should figure this out, and maybe, you know, we throw the 10 grand at it, and then, you know, somebody, you commit with them to sit down and figure out exactly what their need is, you know, in terms of positions, you know, because that's another thing too, right? They throw a public health nurse on, they throw this on, they throw that. You know, it's very confusing, and I don't think anybody disagrees that there's a need, right? But it's when it's right, you can't make any sense. So I mean, I guess I'll support. You know, I'm supportive of the 10, but again, I think it could stay for 3 years because I thought we had it solved in 2019 when they came in with this proposal about the new position. Right, they were going to be very, you know, they were going to be like a true number 2 to Linda. And again, I don't know Kristen. I know I don't know the. I can't speak to her skills, right? But it was set up to be a different sort of position, and I think what they currently have. And that's not to say that's not to say the person can't do the position, but we need to get this figured out because it's coming in too many different directions, and it's hard to support when you don't really know fully what your support.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that, and I think the proposal is good. So I would also, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, where does the $10,000 number come from? And what is that buying? Because I just did the math and I could have done the math wrong, but $10,000 would mean 3 hours a week. That would be a $64 an hour role.
I don't think that's how you got that number.
No, it was,
It looks like it's 11.5.
But the motion says to add 3 additional hours.
Well, right, but then maybe you didn't hear it. The motion was written for the chart, but then Jim and Tim, I guess, came up with a memo. So I look at the memo. They're proposing not the 3 hours, but rather 5. Yeah.
Okay.
Jim was saying is, you know, once you give them, you don't really give them hours, you give them money. The other, what I was about to say is, you know, and I realize we're not, presumably, you know, spoiler alert here, we're not going to want to move the article that the governance committee has about how we do budgets. But it is clear from not only what governance has come up with, but what we ourselves have come up with, is that in the planning of the budgets going forward, there needs to be a lot more interdepartmental view of just staff hours and who does what in question. I believe we're also committed to that piece of the budgeting process. And with the, with a new administrator coming in, I think that's one of the priorities you need on this. So regardless of whether there's a motion to that effect, I think part of it going forward will be to rationalize everyone's kind of cooperative.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So if there's no more comments, the decision before us is to put a motion on the floor about supporting the $10,000 that has been included in the FY 23
Right, so
budget.
I don't think it needs a motion. It's already in the budget. I would.
Well, I guess because we as a select board had said 2 weeks ago that we hadn't really had a conversation about
We're having a
this.
conversation.
Right, and we haven't really approved one way or the other.
Well, no,
It's
I don't think
changed.
that's true. We actually did approve the budget with the extra. We noted it. It is noted by Jim. That select board request. Maybe we should acknowledge that, yes, that is select board request.
Well, the select board requested, and that's why we're having the discussion.
Right.
But I don't think we need
Not
to
all
make
of
a
us
motion
are
on
aware
something.
of the request, yeah.
No, I agree, but I don't think we should move on something that's already.
No, it's
All right, are we good to go then? All right,
Yeah.
Nathan, you good to go?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. So we have resolved that issue and now we're going on to the cemetery fees.
It's really
Look,
exciting.
it's your turn.
Great, yeah, it's gouge. No, so I, basically, what's my other? Yeah, so Tim, reviewed the cemetery fees for a number of local cemeteries and hands down, we were way low. And the lowest, lot prices were $800, which is, I project.
Apparently you don't, because
Can
I
you hear me,
didn't
Nathan?
decide from-
Yep.
So, see, you can hear me. Maybe you just tuned into my voice. But anyway, so essentially what we're proposing is we bring the burial fee up to, the low of, and not, this isn't medium, this is the low. So the lowest of all the lots around, were $800. And then the perpetual care fee, which is $0 for us now, it's included in that $800 lot fee. And then the grave opening, remain at $200. So that gives you essentially $1,000, but obviously, the time. But, that's the only one that maybe at some point we should probably review here and see exactly what these costs are. But
Yeah, in my conversation,
what's that?
I was just gonna say, my conversations with Gary and Chris, it seemed like the grave opening was the one where, they're actually losing money because if it's like on a Saturday or something. I mean, but we can do this in baby steps because, 800 is a big jump.
Yeah, no, I think that's just it. So, yeah, they are probably losing money. But in a sense, hopefully the burial, the cost of the lot fee can bring some of that back. So yeah, it essentially brings it to $300, which eventually we're gonna run out of space. We'll find that amount.
How many lots we have left?
I don't know. Do you know?
I knew last month. I calculated it's actually quite a bit of money. I forget the number,
But perpetual, right? It's hopefully they'll outlive us.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing is that, we're just kind of staying, up with some of the lowest in the area. That's essentially what that means.
All right. Yeah, I want to
I'm
make a
gonna
motion.
move my own. Okay. I move, Jesus, I haven't got a motion. That the select board, in its role as cemetery commissioners, vote to set the following new fees for Green Cemetery. become effective 7/1/22. Upon ratification by the voters at the 2022 annual town meeting. So the new fees would be a burial lot would be 800. The perpetual care would be included with the sale of the lot, and the burial is $200.
I'll second that.
Any more discussion? All right, then let's take a roll call vote. Arnold, I.
Oscar, aye.
Brown eye?
Modell, I.
Reed, aye.
All right. Cemetery fees have been approved. Well done, Luke.
Yeah, well, it was all Tim.
Thank you.
I just talked about it.
All right, so we are now moving to the discussion about the annual town meeting warrant and closing the town meeting warrant when we have concluded our discussion. Move to the warrant in our packets. My suggestion about how we do this is that we look at the warrant articles to determine whether, sort of move through them almost the way we do at town meeting, to determine whether there are any, which ones do we want to go back and discuss in terms of whether or not we want them to be on the town warrant. And if that's agreeable with everybody, then I just start taking us through that, beginning with the consent agenda, which we've already discussed. And I think we're all fine. But anybody want to suggest a different way of doing this? Okay. So we have the consent agenda, which takes us through Article 13. Now, since we have that Article 13 is the acceptance of Lions Gate Road. So that would be the one that we would remove from the warrant based on our earlier discussion. Everybody comfortable with that? You're on 13, yeah. On the other, okay.
So
He was singing the first.
Yeah, the consent agenda has us doing up through 13, and we're about to eliminate 13, so it'll be up through 12. Yeah, it's Articles 2 through 12 would be on the consent agenda. And as usual, Wayne will ask if anybody wants to take any of those out. But individual discussion. Do we need a motion at this point for removing 13 or just a consensus? Okay. Okay, so we're going to remove number 13 and then let's move on the budget transfers.
Do these have to be itemized or could that be part of this consent agenda?
I believe Tim's on the phone. Yeah, Tim, you're on the phone. The budget transfers, the transfer from and the transfer to.
I would keep those separate. Those are actually more of a FY22. So if I was doing a special town meeting, they're kind of separate from what's going annual.
It's just, yeah, it's backward looking, not forward looking.
Yeah, so that's going to
Okay.
be done immediately and affected in FY22, where everything else is not really till July 1st.
Okay.
So I don't know. I would just keep them because it's a piece of the warrant article that she would actually take out and do immediately in this fiscal year because it's effective, and everything else is FY23. That makes sense.
Yep, thank you.
any reason not to put that in the
Yeah,
consent
I was
agenda?
gonna say.
Yeah, Kim, is there any reason, did you hear that? Any reason not to put that in the consent agenda?
I would keep it separate
I think that was,
because most everything in your consent agenda is for FY23.
yeah, I think that was my question.
And your budget transfers are an FY22 expense. So, and as an accountant doing your, some towns you'd separate and have a special town meeting that does everything for FY22 and your FY23. And if she's working on the, to do a piece of the warrant, it's just easier to keep your fiscal years separate. And in the booking process, it'll be booked as of FY '22, not FY '23. So I would keep it separate because all your other ones are FY '23 in the consent agenda. Does that make sense?
I think it makes perfect sense.
Before we leave consent, do we want to take a select board position? I think it's good.
I have one more question.
Yeah, come on up to the mic, Jim, but in the meanwhile, Kate has a question.
Well, it's Article 8 about the revolving funds authorization, since we are changing some of the caps, should that not be in the consent agenda?
We should be taken
Or
out.
be taken out?
No, you're just increasing one cap on one of them, so it's just a numerical amount.
The actual motion will be the chart of all the revolving
Yeah.
spending on the.
Right.
The purpose is to be enumerated.
Okay, so that will be,
Yeah, it'll be obvious.
all right.
Yes, sir. A bookkeeping or report issue, Kim actually got this last night. In the consent agenda, there is a conflict salary is important part of this. However, in the budget article, or it is now, it's also in that budget. However, even though the wording says it's not, but it is.
Right.
So unless there's a legal reason to keep it in the consent agenda, just drop it there. It would be approved as part of the budget.
And do we know if there a legal reason that it needs to be identified this way? Because this is salaries of elected officials.
So it's an elected official.
Yeah.
Town meeting has to set salaries of elected officials.
Would you then take it out of the operating budget?
You-
That would actually has a whole domino effect, but you can do it. That's-
It should come out of the operating if you have it separately so that you don't put it into your levy twice. Or you put,
Just pay it double.
or you put it in you can keep it in your operating budget, but I would just bracket it and put elected and have your town clerk, her elected piece, and then her budget underneath if you were to do it because it is an elected position. But right now it's almost double dipped. It's in your operating budget and it's in the other. And that got confusing. I know my first year here, when I came in, I'm like, you'd almost raise it twice and you don't want to do that.
But, so does that mean you notate its elected salary in the operating budget without changing the numbers? Here you bracket it, say C operating budget?
You either take her salary out of the operating budget and reduce that number by her, whatever, 75,000. Wayne can correct me, and keep it over in your consent agenda, or you take it out of the consent agenda, leave it in your operating. But what I would do is have that number isolated, town clerk elected like salary, and then have her town clerk budget underneath of that so that it is identified as a separate elected position.
Maybe this is something we should leave up to our finance director and the chair of the FinCom to work out how it should show up in the warrant. If that's
We're gonna be closing the warrant, so we can't do that,
Yeah.
right? I would say we leave Article 3 in and we take it out of the operating budget.
No, but the issue I have is the apples to apples. Your year-over-year increase. In prior years, it's always shown up in the operating.
No, it's been here. It's been an article.
I think it's shown up in your operating, but obviously at some point it didn't. If you had it bracketed, it does not include the town clerk salary.
What did we do last year? Was it? in
Last year you had it both places.
increase is here in the consent
And
agenda.
it was not part of, so it's not part of it. So if you take it out, it becomes apples to
We
apples?
would take it out of live current year and next year. We can do that.
Wayne wants to weigh in.
When you look at the total budget, which we always look at, if that doesn't change, it's just what you look at in that article.
Yeah, I don't know, did everybody on the call hear what Jim just said? Probably not.
No, I couldn't hear Jim.
We can take it out of both current year and next year. There is the 2.25%, which we probably should put in Article 3, whatever it is, also. because that's part of, it'd be part of the salary, the COLA. And we take out of both years. Ultimately, and I'm thinking of the budget letter we have, you know, look at the increases and so forth, it doesn't change that really. Broader bottom line. It will change that, our article 13. A little bit.
Is the, I thought when we did town clerk as a line item in this spreadsheet budget, maybe salary's not in there, so other pieces to the town.
It should be both, it could be 22 or 23.
I thought, I noted it, I thought this total of $115,000. Not,
There was an issue with last year, the correct salary wasn't filled in, so we had to make that change. So, yeah, it does look that way.
So, and then what happens with the other salaries, though? Those are not in the operating budget?
Which one?
Well, chairman of the assessors, the moderator,
Those stipends are, those are separate.
they're not in the operating budget.
Wayne, what did you want to say on this?
I just wanted to say, I respect the logic that Kim articulated for not having it in the consent agenda as something potentially for you to consider. From my perspective, it's an irrelevant consideration, whether it's FY 22 or 23. Basically, the question is, is what's being proposed something that is fairly routine, not likely to get a lot of controversy? And I'm not able to hear everything that Jim is saying, but this sounds like fairly esoteric accounting stuff, and the money is the money that's being spent. So I have a hard time imagining that people are going to want to discuss it separately, but if they really want to, they can always pull it out of the consent agenda. So the real question is, how do you want to deal with it in terms of where the money is coming from? But I would keep it in the consent agenda either way.
Then you should take it out of your operating, so it's not double dipped, because when you do with the state, it gets confusing when you have an article with a money thing of like the town clerk's salary here, and then you also have it over in another place. That's all I'm
I
saying.
think I also heard Wayne say something about Article 14. And what I heard him say was, he doesn't care whether it's FY 22 or FY 23.
He doesn't, but it makes a big deal when you're booking the warrant on an accounting side. Yeah.
Well, but that's just covered in how you treat it. It doesn't matter whether it was adopted through consent or through separate.
Oh, right. No, it doesn't. I'm just saying.
A separate article, yeah.
Right.
I agree with you. However, you need to have it reflected in the articles, that and not double dipping. Yes, that's important. But beyond that, it doesn't matter. Being on the consent agenda or not is separate from that.
It doesn't, but I also had a town that had special town meeting and annual together, and it makes it very difficult on it to pull it all apart from other things.
Well, we try to keep things simpler here when we can.
So I propose, I'd like to, Kim, I'd like to propose that we keep it in the consent agenda. We take it out of the operating budget and we move on.
Right. As long as you, take it out of one or the other.
That's what I said. That's what I said.
Salary. And then we need to also decide about Article 14.
Okay, but on Article 3, right, Article 3, we're leaving as it is, right, correct? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So back where we were though.
Back.
Do we want to put, no,
Oh, you
before
were
we go to
raising.
put,
We want to,
hard book our positions on
support
the
for
12
the
articles.
consent agenda. Yeah, I would say yes.
We'll also change that salary in Article 3 to include the 2 and 4.
Well, that's something that we have to do as cleanup. But I mean, I think if we agree here that we approve all those 12 articles, then we can put them in the book.
And do we need to take a vote on that? Yeah, yes, we do, right? Formal vote, yeah. So, could someone make a motion to that effect, please?
Well, I still don't know what's in it yet. Are we putting 14 in it or not?
No, it's through Article 12, we're dropping Article
I move that we put the select board's position each of Articles 1 through 12, Article 3 being amended as we discussed.
You're saying that the select board approves.
Well,
No, I think
I
what
guess
we're
it-
saying is, that they're going in. We're not taking a position, right? We're just saying
no. Well,
those articles are going in.
no, they're going in anyway. Well, okay, yeah, you're right. Actually, you're right.
No, they're not going in anyway. That's what
No,
tonight
you're
is
right.
about.
I move that we include Articles 1 through 12, including Article 3 as amended And-
In the warrant.
in the warrant book, and that we, in those particular articles, take a position of select board approval.
I think,
Are people okay doing it together or you want to separate it?
I thought tonight was to close the warrant.
It is, but David had raised, I mentioned it earlier, that if there are ones where we could easily decide that we're in approval, that we approve the warrant article, that we could take that vote tonight so that it could be printed in the book, which will get printed up for the Turner Friday and Monday.
Okay. Second,
So.
we didn't, yeah, second.
Okay. So unless there's more discussion, we're gonna take a vote on both putting these on the warrant article and up in the warrant book, and also that we're voting in favor of it. Roll call vote, please. Arnold, aye.
Oscar,
Brown eye.
Well, I-
We got,
And now let's move on to Article 14, which is a budget transfers. Now, remember, I just want to point out that we have really difficult discussions happening for the, about the articles at the end of the warrant book. So
So how do you want, these ones, you want to go each one or go through them?
what I would say is let's.
I move we include Article 14 as a new number, and support it.
Second.
Any discussion? I'll take a roll call vote. Arnold, aye.
Oscar,
Brown eye.
Well, I-
Reed, aye. All right, Article 15.
I think we can make this a whole lot quicker if we don't support Article 15. We don't put it in.
Okay.
The only town employee who gets paid.
Yeah, that's right.
Well,
We'll have a
no,
lot of-
any funding. Oh, no, there'll be $50 for you.
That's right, true.
okay.
Yeah,
Um,
Wayne's gonna have to cough up his 50.
Yeah,
We,
so we just have to, the line would have to change, the town clerk line, under the first
And the
general
totals.
government and the total, and then the total, right?
So I move inclusion of Article 15 as amended, and I also move that we support it.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, let's take a roll call vote. Arnold, aye.
Oscar,
Brown eye.
Well, I-
Reed, aye.
Excellent. Then Article 16 is capital equipment for long-term capital requirements.
Move that we put it in and move to support it.
second,
Any discussion? Let's take a roll call vote. Arnold, aye.
Oscar,
Brown eye.
well,
Reed, aye.
Article 17 is municipal facilities. Now, Tim, I understand that these numbers will change, right? Having dropped out the Lionsgate, is that right?
Yes.
So the
But
numbers
our
will
vote will apply,
Yeah.
right? Our vote will apply.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Good.
So I move that we include Article 17 and that we move approval.
Any discussion?
yeah, we're rattling along here, but Jim, I assume on the ones that say FinCom, you've already also approved those.
Roll call, please. Arnold, aye.
Oscar,
Brown eye.
Well,
Reed, aye.
Article 18
So,
is.
Can I just ask a quick question? We're voting approval now because this is going to print at the end of this week?
Correct.
Okay, and so is FinCom going to be voting approval before the end of this week?
We already did.
They
They already
voted,
did.
they voted Monday.
Okay.
Yesterday.
Okay, great. All right. So, You'll tell us then, Jim, anything I can't really hear well, so this may have already been
Right.
sent. But Jim, jump up and down and wave your hands if there's anything you guys didn't vote in favor of.
We're watching it.
Okay. I
Article
just
18.
want, I want us to be in unison if we can be.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure he would,
Yeah.
let us know.
Article 18 is the senior tax deferral program, and this is the one that's been rewritten based on the conversations between the assessors, the board of assessors, and the COA.
Did the FinCom take a position on that? Jim? FinCom didn't take a position, so maybe we should.
Question, Jim. Why not?
So the comment, Nathan, is that the FinCom didn't take a decision on it because they didn't really think it would have a financial impact.
Do you think we should try to publish a position on this one, or wait? I'm asking.
We've already deliberated as a board.
I'm comfortable supporting it.
So then I'm gonna move that we include Article 18 and that we support it.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please. Arnold, aye.
Oscar,
Brown eye.
Read on.
Then we get to the Article 19, amending the Green Cemetery fees, which we just discussed.
I don't know about that one.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so I'm going to move that we include that one and that we also support it.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, roll call vote, please. Arnold, aye.
Brown eye.
We're all right.
Read on. Talk about inflation.
Article 20, the CCHS access road paving and lighting at the high school.
I'm going to move that we include it.
My understanding from last week, Tim, is that by approving it, we don't have a time limit. Congress has some procedural issues that's going to end up delaying their vote because of the ballot vote. We have to ballot vote this again.
It's supposed to be on this.
Please. I move to place the article. What? We can, I'm not approved, well, we can support it.
Jim, yeah.
Yes, Jim.
Yeah,
We also voted to support it, I guess we know that we discussed at some length this phrase or any other sum that follows the dollar amount.
Yeah.
And that there are some concern about the vagueness of that phrase, but nevertheless, we voted for it.
That always statutorily, though, we can't see the exclusion.
You can think, but it's just the
Do they
strange phrase.
normally put that in?
It's been in other articles. And I just was received about it, up with Jared Stanton. It's their language, it's exactly the same. So yeah, I think we can be okay. It's just in future articles, nothing that's.
I should know Jared won't be around.
yeah.
All right, so you put the motion on the floor. We need a second.
I'll second it then.
Any discussion? All right, roll call vote, please. Arnold, aye.
Brown eye.
Whatever.
Read on.
Article 21, about changing the name of the Council on Aging to the Council on Aging and Human Services.
I move that we approve this article and that we support it.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes. So this is one of those things where I think, I'm in favor of it, but I worry about the kind of unintended consequences of doing something you think, oh, that makes sense. What I worry about are two things. It's kind of like, what kind of comes under this umbrella? If I think about human services, is that also like Veterans Affairs? Like, should that be in here? And I also worry that it's an expansion of scope. And so it's going to expand the desire to bring in even more services and more staff. And so I think it's a great idea. I just worry that it's there's going to be unintended consequences that we're going to be dealing with in the future. And I just wanted to raise that.
That's a valid point. In there, I must note, however, in their summary, they say that it's not, they don't mean it to alter their ongoing commitment, but it's intended to communicate that our services and support are available to all residents in the
Right. I totally get that. What happens 3 years from now, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I just, I think it's a great idea, but I just worry that there's going to be unintended consequences.
You don't have to vote for support.
Well, why don't we amend the motion to just accept the article?
To
Place
place the article on the warrant, right? Are you happy with the amendment?
Sure. As amended.
So the motion is to include this article on in the warrant. And it's been seconded. Any more discussion? Roll call vote then. Arnold, aye.
Hospital, I.
Brown eye?
Read aye.
Article 22, which is about the military taking town employees called to active duty.
Move that we accept the article, that we place the article on the warrant.
And not take a visit.
Well, we can.
Didn't we already deliberate this as well?
I think we did when we
So I think
talked about
if
the
we
policy.
deliberated, I
Make
think
sure
it's
that people feel comfortable with it before charging it.
I think anything we've deliberated on. we probably-
Okay, so I amend that to place the article and support it.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote then. Arnold, aye.
Hospital, I.
Brown eye?
Read aye. And I move that we place Article 23 and include it.
This is about
Support
providing up to
it,
50% of health insurance premium for spouses of former employees. I would like to ask Jim to describe the FinCom's conversation about this.
And we didn't take a vote on it because there was a question, there was a desire to understand what the financial impact might be. And we had no way to quantify it. And it was also noted that the state does not offer this benefit to its retirements. So because of the cost. So it was just, it wasn't that people were opposed to it, but they thought it might have some sense of what it might mean.
Luke, could you translate that for me?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I can do that.
Yeah.
The FinCom felt that they wanted to have more information about the potential cost to the town, and that noted that at the state level, the state does not provide this benefit because of the cost.
but the key thing, and you said for retirees, this isn't, right? The state doesn't provide it for retirees. Yeah, this isn't designed for retirees. Right, this is designed to,
No, I meant in thought, but
Oh, okay.
I missed.
yeah, no, but
Oh, okay.
there were a couple other things that maybe I missed the meeting. But were we gonna put a time limit on this? It was gonna be a year, right? We're gonna do it indefinitely. Yeah,
No, in fact, we never talked about a time limit, and at a certain point, somebody said, and what about the
the kids,
kids?
yeah, that was.
And we cannot do the kids by state statute, that's
You
not
can't, okay, so
possible.
that's not allowable, but then,
Right.
yeah, because like this gets to Jim's point, right, where, if we put a time limit on them, we quantify the cost, right? But if you don't, I mean,
I don't see how we can do it without a time limit.
no, exactly.
And certainly if we're going to do it, I think that the headline there has to say something about surviving spouses rather than just former spouses.
Yeah.
Because that could be read,
Right.
It says surviving spouse, I believe, in it.
No, it says.
I'm
spouses
saying-
of former employees,
Yeah.
and that's absolutely
That's
not right
false.
either. It really is.
It doesn't say continued service. I know it's not worded wonderfully, but it's continued service of a former employees, which means continued service, they'd have to have already been on the plan, not to come on
We have
after.
to
No, I know,
redraft,
but
we have
just
to
the
redraft.
item, the article, the bolded part of the article at the beginning says.
Yeah,
provide 50% that language needs to change.
It's not written really well, but
Yeah.
intent was
It
the
doesn't say-
service to continue with the surviving spouse at a
Right.
rate of 50%, not 100. But yeah, the former is kind of a weird.
It's for
I would-
surviving spouses of former
Right.
employees.
Right.
No,
No,
current.
yeah, they have to have been an employee at the time of their death. or-
Continued service, so they have to be on the plan. A spouse dies and they can, if they continue it, what is the percentage that they pay?
Yeah, that's
And,
right.
and for how long? So,
Yes.
Well,
Not-
yeah, there's no time on it, till death.
How long?
I'm not sure that this is ready for us to have it as an article. Maybe it's a fall article.
I agree.
Okay. It's too bad that we didn't look at this more carefully earlier, because there is a surviving spouse
Right.
who's very badly impacted by this.
Right.
We started this months ago to put it on, so.
There was no policies, therefore there hasn't really been a need for it, but there was a situation that came up that there was no policy written on it.
Does that mean that we as the Board of Selectmen are unable to take action on an individual case without this article passing?
Yes, you
Uh,
have to adopt the provisions of the Mass General Law to do it.
You can't.
Could I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Yes, Wayne.
Look, let's not exalt form over substance here. The warrant is basically, its main purpose is to give an agenda so that people know what's going to be talked about, okay? And you're talking about the acceptance of something that's allowed by statute. So unless what you're proposing is something that is less than what is allowed by the statute, other than the 50%, not the 50% is important, but if the exact language, well, actually, you do have some ambiguity here because it says 50% in the header, but doesn't say 50% in the text. But my point is that you could say you're approving this and just direct Tim as he's drafting the final warrant article to use precisely the language that is used in the statute. And I think that gives basically that gives sufficient notice to the voters that what we're talking about is providing an additional benefit to surviving spouses, and more detail on how that is going to be carried out would be in the actual motion. So you don't have to have it totally wordsmithed to be able to approve it tonight.
Statute does say 50%.
So I guess,
If the timing's important, you may want to do that. If the timing's not important, then yes, delay it until the next one.
so I guess then the question that I would have for Tim is, because I have not gone and read this statute, does the statute put a time limit on it?
I fully read the statute.
I'm sorry, I was asking Tim.
Oh, Tim, I
don't
gave
believe so.
because it's more personnel.
From that point forward, I don't think the sunset provision.
The statute, at least I'm looking up, does talk about the 50%, but it also talks about retired. Surviving spouse of unemployed or retired. Is that what we were talking?
So retired, so if a spouse, if a couple divorces after retiring, then they would be allowed this benefit?
Well,
No, this benefit is talking about a surviving spouse of someone who's passed away.
but it references a statute that says something. I think this needs more legal. Even though
So I just want to know what, if we're going to put it on the warrant, I'd like to, and we're going to say it matches what the Mass General Law is. What is that exactly? And my bad, I have not read the statute.
So I have the statute up. It says the surviving spouse of an insured employee or a retired employee.
I think that's all we have
That's
to
the
write.
language.
And is there any, and
Yes.
there's no end time on it?
You do mean that?
No, we,
Yeah.
I didn't think we were talking about retired employees.
No, I didn't.
No. Okay. Talking
Just-
about a
Probably
current
like in the
employee.
the retirement benefit, it's usually till their death too.
We'll have to check with Tim Castle, because Donna Brewer is.
Well, the other way to go is to leave it on and not move it.
But
Right,
I
and
still
just leave it on
change-
with the change though in the header here, right, so that it makes it clear it's for a surviving spouse. And
So
not-
what's going to the printer is what you need, right? So you would say,
Correct,
you
it
just
goes to
add
the book. Yeah,
50% of health insurance for the, so you just insert the word surviving.
50% of health insurance. Well, I
For
would say of
spouses.
continued health insurance.
Continued. You can't start brand new because that's part of your policies if you don't.
So
if you're not-
continue.
Insurance
For
For
surviving
surviving
spouses.
spouses.
That means employees who died while they were still employed and retirees who died. That's
Yes.
what's going on.
Yes,
All right, I guess.
so there we,
but we
We're
really
just
only
saying-
wanted it for the, and I think, I'm not a lawyer, but I think this just allows you to do it for either or and.
it doesn't compel you to do it
Doesn't
for
compel you to do it for the
for
retirees.
retired employees.
I
we would
think
only
once
be
you
doing-
put it in, though.
No, because we would be doing in our bylaw and in our motion and in our
Fair enough.
procedures, it would only be for the spouses of employees, not of retirees.
But it does, I'm not allowed to read it, but I am married, and I'm a son. So, except MGL blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
What does that tell you? Council? Except such and such MGL. Not except with reservation. It's going to need legal opinion. The question is only whether Wayne is correct, and we can leave it on there, and we can wordsmith the motion and stuff. It's still going to come.
Again, you're interpreting Mass General law. I believe it's anybody on a continued service, it's on a plan. If a spouse dies, that's the employee, the other spouse can continue the benefit at 50%.
Okay.
Otherwise, they wouldn't, it would go to 100. And that would be whether
Yeah,
they're
thank you.
retiree
Yeah.
or,
Tim,
yeah.
right, we understand that, thanks.
Oh,
We're just discussing whether or not we need more legal advice on this. Thanks.
I think, Tim, I guess the question is to Tim, do you think you can get that legal advice tomorrow? And maybe make the motion contingent.
Yeah, no, I'm quite with Donna. You know, she gave us the sign.
Right,
Yeah.
that's,
Understanding that our intent is we want it to be to surviving spouses of employees.
and I guess the question is, do we want to talk about time? Well, that would be in the motion.
Right,
Motion,
we can
we
add
have
that to
time,
motion.
and then we could also just not even move it if we don't get this all ironed out by time.
Right. So I just want to point out, and I'm not trying to be mean here at all. I mean, I definitely, I think everybody knows I'm all about giving benefits to our employees and their families. But let's say we have, you know, a 25-year-old employee who is married and passes away. We could be on, you know, we could be paying half of their medical insurance for 60, 70 years.
We were just saying, Nathan, that in the motion that we put forward, we could put a time limit on it. But right now, we're talking about just getting the language for the book, for the warrant book, clear enough by Tim talking with Donna Brewer in the next day or two. So we have that for the warrant book. And then the motion itself gets developed later.
And if we can't put the time limit, we may not move it. We may decide not to move it. But we'd like to have it in the book.
Does that make sense?
Sure, anybody can stand up and move the article, though.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah. I got it. This
Yeah, I
one,
don't-
I can't imagine who would, right? It's, you know, they wouldn't have any self-interest in it.
Okay, so the vote is to include this in the warrant book with the language being reviewed by legal counsel this week. We take no position. We take no position.
I'm still troubled by that. Something moving.
Yeah, I move that. I move that we put the article with no position.
You want to comment?
I'm sorry, I did not hear the motion.
That we include the article with no position. We take no position on it.
So my question is back to what's published in the book. The bold sentence, are we going to amend?
Yes, we just discussed that Tim is going to talk with
Well,
Donna.
that I know, but we have to vote on what they're going to see. Is it going to be a sentence? We're just going to accept what, how are we going to convey what Donna?
No, we're not wordsmithing. Donna is going to talk to
Before you
Tim.
go to the printer, it's gonna go on to all.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm good.
Yeah, and then we always have the opportunity to speak at town meeting. Somebody already presents this and then we have
Right.
to state the specific. We need to have a
I'm
slide.
okay.
Okay, so the motion's been made and seconded that we put this in the warrant book. Roll call vote, please. Arnold, aye.
Oscar will lie.
Brown eye.
Okay.
Reed, aye.
All right, thank you. Moving on to Article 24 about the Munis cash module.
I move that we include Article 24 and that we take the position that we support.
Take a second. Thank you. Any discussion?
We voted last week.
The FinCom voted to support this last night. All right, no more discussion. I'd like a roll call vote. Arnold, aye.
Oscar will lie.
Brown eye.
Okay.
Reed, aye.
Article 25 is the CPA annual recommendations. Our illustrious chair is here, and he has not, we're going to find out in the motions handbook.
Yeah,
But-
that's typically right.
Yeah. So we should, I think I would like a motion to include this in the warrant article.
I move that we include it in the warrant
Warrant
article,
book, sorry.
warrant book, Article 25, but that we do not take a position on it.
Second.
All right, any discussion?
So I just want to clarify one thing. When you're saying that we do not take a position, we will take a position at a later time, right?
Correct.
It's not that,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah. We're
That's,
not
I don't think we need to say that part of it. I think we just say we're going to include it in the warrant.
Yeah, you're right. It's just that we're not going to take a position.
Yeah.
Printed in the warrant. So I just wanted
Yeah.
to make it crystal clear.
Yeah, I just don't want it written in the article, in the warrant article that, I mean, the warrant book that we didn't take a position.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
yeah,
No.
no, that's right.
I think that's understood, but thanks. Okay, roll call vote on CPA annual recommendations. Arnold, aye.
Oscar will lie.
Brown eye.
Okay.
Reed, aye.
Okay, so the next set of articles, Article 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, and 32 are ones that are being put forward by the governance task force. I would like to, though, offer specific information that the task force has withdrawn Article 27, the human resources position. So we'd like to see this on the fall town meeting. And the rest of these are currently being proposed by the task force to be on the April warrant in the April one.
So you're saying 27 and 30 have been withdrawn?
No, just 27. The
Okay.
Human Resources Director. Yeah, and Rebecca, the chair of the task force, is also on the call. But I think we may want to go to the discussion about Article 29, which is the preparation of the annual budget. With Jim being here, he can tell us what the finance committee discussed last night. And it may be that we can have a conversation. It may be that it makes sense for us to have a discussion about that one in particular, and then we can go back to the others. So let's dive right in. This is the article that proposes to amend the general bylaws, section 3.9.5, to provide that the annual budget for the next fiscal year to be prepared by the town administrator and treasurer. And actually, if you flip down in your packet to the section that was the memo that was provided by the task force, it's on my packet. It's page 65.
Starts at
That is on the second.
It's actually good.
Yeah, sorry, it's the second page of their memo. If you go to page 2 and look at, sorry, yeah, the bottom of page 2. Let me say that again. That
It's actually on page 71.
right. Really
It's Article 20.
Yeah, but I'm looking for the language. I thought there was a date in there now. Is that not included?
Yes, that's on.
Oh, it's December 15th. Okay, I'm sorry for rambling here. So Article 28, preparation of the annual budget. It's about having the town administrator and the treasurer consider expenditures and develop a draft budget for the next fiscal year after collaborating with various town departments, officers, and bodies charged with the expenditure of town money. The draft budget for the next fiscal year should be submitted to the finance committee no later than December 15th. I'm going to stop there. There's one more sentence about getting copies of the town warrant. But the relevant part is what I just read.
You're on a different thing. Oh,
I'm looking at the memo from the task
so am
force.
I.
It's the very bottom on page 2 of their memo,
It's
last line.
if you did it as a separate thing, it's page 34.
Above the rationale.
It's above the rest.
Yeah, and then the rationale follows. Rebecca, maybe it would be reasonable to have you, would you like to say a few words briefly about this? I know it's hard to summarize the rationale, but would you like to give us a few comments about the intention?
Sure. Part of our overall review, we came to the conclusion, we had a lot of feedback around the town administrator and the need for the town administrator to play a strong role. And so this came as part of that package to give the town administrator the authority, the empowerment to do his or her job. And so, this is a change to just the very beginning of the process. We specifically left the remainder of the process in place so that the initial draft is put together by the town administrator and the treasurer, but then it goes to FinCom for the, for FinCom to do its existing process, hold the meetings with the departments, dig in and get through to the detail that they need and to feel comfortable with to submit the budget, to approve it and submit it. We heard that the kind of unintended consequence of the way that the process is working now may be adding to the siloed effect that we hear a lot of concerns about, both from residents and from employees. between the departments. And so this would enable the town administrator to hopefully cut down on that siloed effect, get those departments talking and collaborating as they are trying to figure out how to move the business of the town forward. This is a bit of a standard practice in other towns, but we do recognize that we like the outcome of what FinCom produces. And so we were, attempted to be pretty careful to make sure that we were only affecting that beginning part of the budget process and not impacting the actual authority of FinCom and its ability to hold the hearings and dig in. I think we added, so the statutory requirement is that the budget needs to be submitted to FinCom before 90 days prior to town meeting. We added that December 15th deadline because it gives approximately a month to maybe even a month and a half before town meeting as traditionally held by Carlisle. So that we wanted to make sure we gave sufficient amount of time, because that is one of the concerns that we heard from FinCom, is they didn't want it to just be a kind of rubber stamp, which is not at all what we were trying to achieve. I think as we search for the new town administrator, if we want good quality candidates, this might be something that is really impactful to the search. It might limit the quality of candidates that we receive. If they, if you have a quality candidate, they typically can kind of choose what they want to do and what town they want to work for or what position they want to have based on what it will look like for them in that leadership role. And so I think this was also a consideration in that we may not get the best candidates to come on board if they're not enabled to do the job that they feel they need to, or have that ability to kind of guide the ship, if you will. So I think that's kind of the short version. And so, yeah, thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca.
We've been struggling with the budgeting calendar for many years. And one of the things that we actually have done at one of our last passes was we said, for instance, that any requests for changes in personnel had to come in by August, because August was the date that we needed in order to do all the budgeting. So December 15th strikes me as rather late, just judging from how we've operated in the past. That in fact, we've been finding that we need almost a whole year to budget. And so I just want to throw that out.
Kate, how is that even relevant? I mean,
Well, I'm
there's
just,
a timetable. Getting prescriptive at the bylaw level is not the way to go. Like, we have a process that people understand.
Yeah.
They ran a schedule, things change from year to year. 1 year we had a wait because of COVID. I mean, I want to go up a level, okay, before we read each article, but there's a proposed bylaw to increase or to specify the town administrator's responsibility. And that's, I think, a good thing. We should not be silent at the bylaw level in the town administrator's responsibility. And we clearly, for example, talk about the treasurer's responsibility. So I'm all for that as an approach. But then you've got a vehicle in which you can put responsibility in that one. So, and I don't want to pick them apart. I'm just saying, like, I sort of agree with the governance committee that you have to look at the thing as a package because it is intertwined. I just don't think we're ready. So rather than say this isn't ready, there's a whole nother bylaw about the town administrator's responsibilities. Put it in there. You don't have to be so prescriptive. I mean, I just don't feel like the pieces mesh together. I think the whole thing needs to be engineered.
I think that, with all due respect, Kate's point was incredibly relevant. I think it's all about timing. I think that this is a good idea. Like, let's get town staff more involved in the process, right? Let's get the treasurer, let's get town administrator I think when I first started, there was more involvement in this process. But I think that the timing is incredibly important. And so, if FinCom is expecting a draft that, I mean, could change entirely, right, based upon what they hear, and I don't see their process changing. They need to get that preliminary draft a lot earlier than December 15th in order for them to be able to do their process unimpacted by this new bylaw.
This is RJ Matthew here. On
Hold on
this,
1 second,
RJ,
RJ,
you have to wait.
hold on 1 second, yeah, you need to be recognized, so, hold up your hand and we'll see if we can come back to you, okay? I wanted to throw out a comment that I believe, there was some discussion about having this, written in such a way that it was, a mutually agreed upon date. Rather than trying to specify, a particular date, since as we've noted, things can change from year to year. Because I too support, having the town administrator and the treasurer, play a stronger role, play more of a leadership role within town hall in terms of the development of a first, cut of the budget. I wanted to see, Luke, did you have a comment?
No, I mean, I pretty much agree with Nathan. I do think setting the date is tough. But I do want to see, the town administrator and the finance one involved. Because it is important to bring all those pieces together. I mean, FinCom shouldn't have to do that all by itself. But I think FinCom's process works. So, yeah, I mean, if it could start the process earlier, if you get them involved earlier, but FinCom is still allowed to do their process, then I think there's a way to make this work. If it's going to come so far down the pike that FinCom, isn't doing their meetings with everybody, isn't doing their one-on-one thing, isn't allowed to have the back and forth, I think this is
So this is one where, I think, I would say that the select board should consider, whether you might want to have this be on a fall town meeting, instead of be considered at this April town meeting, to allow for more consideration, discussion, and figuring out how it would work and what would be appropriate for a bylaw, rather than rush something that is clearly right now of concern to the people that would be affected by it.
I have one other question.
Yeah.
And this is probably out of the way for Tim. Could the article just be the first 3 lines, and then where it says 3.9.4, that goes in the motion, all that stuff, so that because the article is about to see if the town will vote to amend general bylaws section 3.9.4, provide that the annual budget for the next fiscal year shall be prepared by the town administrator and treasurer, or take any action related thereto. And then not put any of that language about 3.9.4 gives us at least between now and April, and then if we don't, then.
I think what that would say, Kate, is that the treasurer and the town administrator are creating the budget, not FinCom or.
Yes.
I think you just.
The same problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to recognize Jim Yard, who, again, the finance committee discussed this last night.
I guess our committee last night was concurred with the point that Brian just made, that we think this needs more time.
I'm sorry, Jim, could you speak a little louder?
More time for consideration. Last night was the first time the finance committee as a whole considered this. It was brought to us last night for the first time, and yet now tonight it would be on the line. I have opinions on this, but I think rather than debate them in detail, I think it just needs more time. And that is not really the way things work best in Carlisle, which is to sort of spring it on town meeting in a printed booklet, but in fact to have open meetings, discussions, hearings, and I don't see a reason to rush this on to the line. So we could talk about the substance, but I think the process here needs more time.
So more time than just between now and the end of those. That's what I was just asking. That was.
That's sort of the point I was making.
I would, RJ, if you have something pertinent to this, if you can say briefly.
Yes, I'm sorry, but I couldn't hear Jim. It's really hard. So if I'm
Jim
out
was
of
saying
control.
that he thinks we need, it would be good to wait on this, give more time for the discussion about it and more sort of hearings, opportunity for the finance committee and others to discuss it, and then to kind of be considered at a fall town meeting.
So what I'm sensing is that the summary of what you just said is consider this for fall, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I did a little bit of shuttle diplomacy between Jim and Victor, and I understood some of their sensitivities. I can say that at least as far as I was involved in the team, there was absolutely zero desire to upset something which was going well, which was the work of the FinCom. Okay. I think if there is one big benefit which I think you might want to consider is that you will be hiring a town administrator pretty quickly. And that person will feel his wings clipped if he or she has less than a role to play in this process.
Yeah, thank you, RJ. I will say, just as somebody, as the chair of the select board, and the discussions you've already had with the search firm about the skills and qualities that we're looking for in the next town administrator, there's absolutely no question that we are going to be making it very clear that the position of the town administrator will include a leadership role on the town side in terms of developing the budgets. Yeah.
Again, I think this is another one of those articles that we are largely in support of. We just would like to have time to polish it, to make sure that it doesn't do some things that we don't, that we'll regret later, especially in the fact, particularly because we are in a time of flux and we don't know where all the pieces are going to lie.
So I would just add that I think no one on the finance committee opposes having the town administrator play more of a role in the budget process.
Right.
And we don't think we need a bylaw to do it, but
Right. So I think we've had this discussion here on the select board on this one. I wonder if somebody wants to make a motion about whether or not to include this in the warrant book.
I would really, I mean,
The task force, yeah, I mean,
it would be so much better, honestly, if the task force were to withdraw it. Because it bothers me that they did a lot of work. They worked innumerable hours in the past few months. And I really feel terrible about this because we're so close and yet we can't be in full support yet. And I want to honor the effort they've made, and I don't want them to feel that we're just dismissing what they've come up with. And so I don't know how to work this.
Well, I think Rebecca, you can speak as the chair. My understanding is that we have to make a decision tonight about whether it be included in the book, and the task force can't meet before that to agree or not agree to defer this.
Yeah, and
Tim, did you have a suggestion?
Well, just to say that it's not on the warrant yet. Before,
Right.
affirmatively put on the warrant.
Right.
If the words on a page now, you haven't included it in the warrant.
No, right, I was just saying that's the decision we have to make tonight.
Warrant.
Yeah.
Right.
we also want to ensure success. We would prefer that this, whatever goes, that it does go in the warrant that's produced by this governance committee is actually passed. And I don't think it's passed because neither the FinCom nor the select board could, I think, vote in come out in support of this. No, does that do it to failure? Maybe not, but I think I'd rather ensure that it's when whatever comes up does pass.
So,
So a point of process, Barney, or Tim, we are voting what to put on the warrant, right? So do we have to vote? I mean, these are not on the warrant now. Do we have to vote to not put something on the warrant?
No,
no, we just would not take a vote, I guess, right, don't vote on this. And that and by not voting on it, it's not included in the warrant book.
Could we commit to putting it on a fall warrant?
Again, I think we should look at the package. My understanding is that we have some other articles.
There are, yeah.
Before we go piecemeal, we should probably, among us, consider the package. There's 2 articles.
Well, if you go back, yeah, if you look, we have, the town administrator bylaw article, the first one, Article 26. Then we have the appointed town clerk, Article 27. And then we have the bylaw amendment to have a regular fall town meeting, unless the select board determines there's not a need for one. And then we have Article 30 about an annual report on the town governance task force, and then Article 31 is extending the term of the current task force beyond town meeting.
So to Kate, that's what, so to answer Kate's question, I mean, we consider moving
We can include those articles.
32, well, in particular for her, really different number.
Well,
The 32 in my book, term of town government's task force,
it's about
extends whatever number it
It's
is.
30.
I'm looking at the thing I got it from Jen, but anyway,
Yeah, it's looking at the old one.
it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. 30
Yeah, I don't think that matters. I think, one of the things about, should we vote or should we not vote now to put it on a fall? I think one of the good things about putting it on a fall is that by then we will be able to see the full report while we're making these decisions.
Right.
And so we'll understand the whole thought process behind all of these things by reading the report. We may say, oh, yes, that makes sense, rather than just seeing these summaries.
I agree. I agree that the fact that we have not seen the report puts us at a great disadvantage in our discussions. So I'm going to, I'm just going to cut right to the case. I'm going to propose that we put Article 31, the term of the town government's task force, on the warrant to give the time for the task force to complete its work, to produce its report, and to polish all the other articles.
And not to
And to put,
support any of the articles, other articles being on the warrant. That's what you're saying.
yes, that's right. The only article I would put on is Article 51. And then, okay, that's one thing. And then I would go on, after, if we decide to do that, I would go on commit to putting all the other articles that need to be put on in the fall warrant.
I'm not sure that I would vote in favor of that. To committing to put all of these articles on in the fall.
Well, not
Yeah,
all
I
of
mean,
them.
in good faith, right?
Well,
I
yes,
mean,
I just,
I think
exactly.
it's a process. We just gotta, well, you have to work through the process, right? But, I mean, I agree. I think Article 31, let's do this, get them right, and do it in the fall.
My major thing is I don't want to talk to everything.
No, but I
Well,
think,
yeah.
you have the discussion, right? And
Yeah.
it'll be an ongoing discussion. I think everybody, FinCom's committed, everybody's committed.
Yeah.
I would have offered slightly, well, significantly different point of view on this, which is my desire in as we began to engage with what the task force wanted to do was to really be in sync, the select board and the task force in moving forward. And I think unfortunately we've gotten, because of all kinds of reasons, but we're not there in time for this April town meeting on these two articles. The budget article and then the personnel one, which is already, the task force has agreed to defer. I do feel that we could move, we could put some of the other articles on the April town meeting. And I want to send a message that we support the extraordinary work that the task force has done, and that some of their recommendations are sensible, and we could support putting them on the April town meeting. The bylaw about a fall town meeting is a perfectly reasonable suggestion, I think. The annual report is a reasonable thing, and the extension of their term, the term of the task force. Alternatively, we can do what you're describing, Kate, and we don't move any of the other, we don't approve any of the other articles going on the town warrant for April. I am concerned that for the task force members, that will not be acceptable, and that therefore will have a significant amount of motions made on the floor at town meeting. Can't you come forward with a motion? If it's not on the warrant, so people can get up and speak to something, but only if it's relevant to the warrant. You can throw it that way. Yes, if there's no warrant article on the April town meeting about the bylaw amendment for fall town meeting, that can't be raised. Can't be moved by someone at town meeting.
So I personally, I don't have a problem with Article 30, as long as, I think that, I had thought that this was going to be, okay, in general, there's going to be a fall town meeting, but the Board of Selectmen can choose not to have one if there aren't, it's like, I don't want it to be even if we don't have anything, we have to have a town meeting. So as long as the Board of Selectmen can say, we don't have anything, we're not going to have a town meeting, I don't see any reason why we couldn't have a bylaw that says we're going to have a town meeting on average, and then add in the term of the task force.
And the annual report on the town governance task force.
I don't think that. I think that would be a fall town meeting thing, because our first report would be what would be we haven't seen the report, right?
Right.
So what would we be reporting on?
Okay.
So we're committing to there will be a fall town meeting.
Yeah.
And they're extended
Sure.
until after, if they want to be extended, until after tonight. They may not want to be, but that it will be extended, just as long as the Board of Selectmen has the authority to say we're not going to have a town meeting if there's nothing going on. We don't want to pull everybody into town hall, into the school for a town meeting that's pointless.
Yeah, and that's the intent of that article, that only if there is the select board can always choose not to hold town.
Yeah, so it just needs to be specified, right? Because that's not in the article now.
Yeah. And the other would be the article about the appointed town clerk. And I would like to ask Peggy if you're comfortable doing so, because we had talked 2 weeks ago about this, and then I had an opportunity to talk further with Peggy, and I wondered if you're comfortable coming up to the mic and telling us what your thinking is now about this article.
Well, I don't object that, to the article, and I support changing the, town clerk position from elected.
I'm sorry, Peggy. I can't hear you, Peggy.
I support the article, and that I support the town clerk's position becoming appointed versus elected. She supports the article and the position going from appointed to elected. That's my sense.
Did you hear that, Nathan?
Yeah,
Okay. Now, that doesn't you still need to decide as a select board whether you want to put this on for the April town meeting.
I'll just
So,
say I'm a little scarred from this because I think I've been part of putting it on twice. In the last, like, what, 3 years, 4 years? Oops. Translated. My phone's saying something. I think the last time, what the heck?
Serious stuff.
It failed by a considerable margin, didn't it? Wayne, do you remember?
It's 2017.
Translate into which language?
All right. I'll just throw my watch across the room here. Yep, I work in tech.
Yeah, it was 2017 is the last vote.
I do not recall the vote. I recall the debate, not the vote.
But at that time wasn't,
Charlene.
Charlene was opposed.
Yeah.
And I actually got up and spoke against it myself. But I have in the last 5 years, kind of drifted away from that position. When does grow and change?
well, I think it's broader. It's not about whether we want it. I think the argument to be made is whether we have a clean, the way Nathan said it, I think was pretty clean, right?
Yeah.
We vote to approve a fall town meeting, we vote to extend the term. Task force. Intention is, please come back to town meeting if your articles and pick them up. You can make words that we commit to working with them closely, but, and then maybe just leave it at, because that's just extending the mission, right? Come up with a complete package. Alternatively, we can pick and choose and say, well, we like this, we like this. I actually favor the first, even though I am actually in favor of this article personally. I think, we're just saying, come back with the full suite of recommendations. We're working more closely to make sure it's the package.
I hope that the task force feels that that's respectful of their time and their effort. But I believe they're trying to be respectful of that. We recognize how much work has gone into it thus far. Trying to be as careful as we can with these.
Because the last thing you need to do is look at this confusion. See that now 2 years in a row with the marijuana. Right?
Yeah.
If anything isn't crystal clear, it's going to be an hour-long discussion. It's going to, right? So I think that's just it. We're supportive of these in general, right? We just need a bit more work.
And in the meantime, I think we'll be all working towards these things anyway as well. So,
And I should note, if I understand it correctly, that the governance task force itself is split this.
yes.
So.
Yeah, personally, I think, I realize that we just went in a different direction. I do support the town clerk becoming appointed. I do not think it will pass.
But that doesn't mean we shouldn't put it on.
No, it doesn't, but how many times are we gonna put it forward?
Well, I think this has been almost the be all end all, right? Because that's been on-
Well, but it will have more, I believe, if, as I articulated a minute ago, if we work with the governance task force with a well-crafted set of things, and that town clerk is one of the set. They have a better chance.
And this,
Comes
And
in.
also with the support of
and this
our
time, we have the
sitting
support
town
of,
clerk.
yeah,
Yes.
which is different from all the other times.
Right.
No, but I mean, we can get the support of the city today. I'm saying, we still have a problem.
But I have a question. Can you hear me, Nathan, with this microphone?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Can you hear me when I use this microphone?
Let me turn my volume all the way up. Nobody who's on, please speak up because
My question is, if it goes on to the fall, town meeting, does that then mean we need a special election in the fall? Because it has to go on a ballot.
It would be effective until the ballot goes to staff. Regular election.
Following.
So we need a special election.
Right, just both things have to happen to be effective. Yeah. If it went on this time, we would serve as elected clerk until the term expired. And then the court can appoint it. That's how it's practiced.
Okay, I think we've had a thorough discussion on this. I think, yeah, it sounds like there's some support for including Article 31 and including Article 29 on the warrant, in the warrant book for the April town meeting.
no, 20,
Let's not do it by numbers because.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry, the fall town meeting, bylaw amendment and the, town, term of the town governance task force. Those two articles, I'm hearing some support for those being the two that go on the warrant book, in the warrant book for the April town meeting.
yes, provided the article is written differently on the town meeting one, that the board of selectmen can choose whether or not to not have it. So as a default, it's there, but the board of selectmen can choose not to have it.
Yeah, that would be developed, that would be specified in the motion.
Yeah, it's in the summary right now.
I don't have it. I don't have a summary on it, so.
It's-
Okay,
If you scroll down at page 67, yeah, it's kind of choppy. You're looking at, you're up.
Okay, I was just voting on those, the upper section is what we're voting on, so, okay.
yeah,
Yeah, the lower section has the summary of. But that has the select board. Which I think,
Okay.
I agree with you.
all right, is there someone that would like to make that motion?
All right, I move we put Article 29 bylaw amendment fall town meeting. And Article 31 term of town governance task force in the warrant.
Second,
We also vote to support some people.
And we will support.
Right, so the motion is to include them in the warrant book and to support them. There's a second. Any more discussion? We'll roll call vote then. Arnold, aye.
Oscar, aye.
Brown eye.
Well,
Yeah.
And I'll just say that what has been said by others, that, you know, we are making a commitment to work with the task force and to make sure that what comes out of the task force has the opportunity to be heard at the fall town meeting. All right. Have we concluded the warrant book? What's included in it? Yes. And do we have to do anything on ballot questions, Tim?
We take the question off about the concept.
Right.
So the just question about
Right. Okay.
yeah.
voted. Good. Anything else we need to do on the warrant for tonight? All right. And then Tim, just to conclude, so you're gonna send us, you'll send around a copy of the, before it goes to print. Okay.
We do need to vote to close the warrant.
Oh, sorry, there's a motion in the packet.
Yeah.
Close the warrant.
Yeah, where is that?
Got it. All right, I move that the select board vote to include one ballot question on May 10th, 2022. Annual town election warrant read as follows. Shall the town of Carlisle be allowed to exempt from the provisions of Proposition 2.5 so-called the amounts required to pay the town's allocable share of the bond issued by the Concord Carlisle Regional School District for improvements including the design and reconstruction of the high school access road? That's the motion.
Is there a second?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear it. Just,
This is putting.
As written.
This is putting the, approving the ballot question regarding.
got it.
The high school, parking lot.
Got it.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. Arnold, aye.
Oscar, aye.
Brown eye.
Reed, aye. And I move that the board vote to close and execute April 25th, 2022 annual town meeting and May 10th, 2022 town election warrants, subject to review by town council and the town administrator as to final form.
Second.
Did you hear that, Nathan?
Yep, I did. Thank you.
Okay. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Arnold, aye.
Oscar, aye.
Brown eye.
Reed, aye.
All right. The warrant has officially been closed. We concluded the town administrator's report. Do we have any liaison reports? And a brief review of the warrant articles that I signed off on. The warrant, sorry. Ooh, too many articles. Yeah. There's nothing unusual in here. It's very straightforward, and included in the packet is that I've now asked Kelly to include the key pieces of it, so you should all have that to take a look at.
I want to say I appreciated that.
But yeah, I thought it was a good idea to start including that. Okay. And then finally, I think we're ready to take a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Third.
All in favor, roll call vote. Arnold, aye.
Oscar, aye.
Brown eye.
Reed, aye.
All right, thank you all. I guess the problem is the tip rate or something going on.
Yeah.
It sounded like the mics were not on. It honestly sounded like it was just getting kind of